welcome to the next episode of the Beach Court Podcast. It's been a while, boys and girls. We have been in the Pacific Ocean. The water is a little cold there, but we're going to heat up the discussion today, and we're going to give you some good topics. We will be talking about our World's Run, of course, our World's Breakdown, and how we react to what happened in top eight, as far as Iron Thorns winning the World Championship. I don't think that was on anyone's bingo card to win the tournament. We do have some guests today. We've got Rahul Reddy coming on to talk about his top eight performance.
Top
Uh,
eight, top eight accounts,
yeah,
accounts.
top eight accounts, right? Like he played an extra round, so
He has a picture with a top eight playmat, so it has
true.
to be top eight.
So it has to be top eight. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll close out with our thoughts on the changes to the championship point structure that was just announced for 2025. So we'll get there. My name is Eric Ridgway. I'm joined as always by Parker Greenwalk and Maddox Corcoran. How you guys doing, Maddox? We're back on dry land or land that's not it's a peninsula, not an island now. So I'm
You know,
rambling.
you,
You're telling me
you,
Hawaii's a peninsula?
No,
Oh wait, no, you're talking about
we're a
the okay.
peninsula.
I
Hawaii
was
is an
like,
island.
what?
Parker takes one season off, well, half season off, and has already mixed up his geography and stuff. Man, I didn't expect us to get two different geography terms. We got peninsula, we got island, we got what's the isthmus, like the small land bridge,
Christmas. Yeah.
And if you ask anyone in my family, they would tell you I'm terrible at geography, which is why I almost botched that. But yeah, I mean, I got it right, I think, at the end of the day. So, Parker, what you been up to while we were gone?
While you were gone, I was cheering from the sidelines at weird hours of the day, but I actually went to two cups this weekend, and I guess you guys were gone for the Wookie Pokey Cup. I also went to that.
Yeah, you got top four there also, right?
Yeah, I got a second there. I got destroyed by Disney.
So
Then
you got a second and a top four already. You're halfway there to
yeah,
your cup finishes,
I'm
buddy.
halfway, sorta.
Meanwhile,
Sort
I've been to one cup and bubbled out of top eight, so
Wah, wah.
Parker out here killing it.
What'd you play this
Yeah,
weekend, Parker? Sorry, Brian, I'll get to you in a second.
I played Ancient Box, which was 100% the right deck. I just had a couple unfortunate things and a slight, or I guess not a slight misplay, but I played that Saturday at the Maitland Cup, and then I played Drago, which was not the play for that cup because every other deck was like a hard matchup for it, except for like two Zard players, and yeah, I don't know.
It's
I
fine.
got
Those
top four
those
at that.
those hard matchups are 50-50s. It's fine.
Yeah, if you play well enough, they can
Fine.
become that.
Yeah. Best deck in format. So never bad to play the
It
best deck in
is.
the format.
exactly.
It is.
Yeah, speaking of which, Max, what'd you play the Worlds?
Yeah, to Worlds. So Eric and I both played the same list to Worlds. We settled on a Regidrago Vstar. Again, we kind of learned early on that hey, this deck was like very underexplored going in NAIC. We weren't the only ones that realized that. It was 25% of the room. It was obviously going to be a deck that was there in a high showing. But we locked into a deck, probably really, 3-4 weeks before, and really just kind of said, hey, let's just decide on a deck we're going to play. Get comfortable with the list, get comfortable with the matchups, and say, hey, the meta might change some before we get there, but ultimately, Drago is still not going to be a bad play.
Yeah,
I think on right, it proved true. Right, there's of the eight decks in top
there's four.
or four decks in top four of them were Regidrago Vstar. So I'm very comfortable with the choice that we made to play the deck. I think right, we had some, ran into some ties or hit some difficult matchups or made some mistakes along the way in Worlds, which didn't quite get us as far as we wanted to, but ultimately a good list and a good deck that I think, again, lots of people saw success with. So feel pretty good about the choice we made going into the World
Yeah.
Championships.
Yeah, same. And we'll jump into that later. We're gonna have a segment where Parker's actually gonna interview Maddox and I about our deck and our deck lists and things that happened at Worlds. But before we get there, we want to talk about a little bit of the results of the World Championship. Fernando Cifuentes took Iron Thorns all the way to first place, even with a loss in top eight, and he made it there. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. Who had Iron Thorns on their bingo card in top eight and winning the tournament?
Not I.
What are your thoughts on that? Like what do you think, Parker? Like you were obviously were there. We see it's around the room, it's doing well. Like, what are you thinking at home?
So I knew it was going to be a deck. I really didn't think it would make it this far because like I feel like the decks at Worlds that typically do better are the ones that have a little more player expression where you can kind of like, you know, outplay your opponent a little bit more, which like I guess like a lot of the decks in this format aren't built that way, seeing like what came out of Worlds, but like we were crazy. Like the like group chat was like, there's an Iron Thorns that's like 9-2 right now or something like that. And
Oh, he
we ended
started
up
day two like 9-0, right?
He started 8-0 at the end of day one. Yeah, it
Yeah,
was
8-0
him and
because
Jesse.
yeah, Jesse beat him, right?
yeah.
Or
Mhm.
Jesse meet him the first round of
He
day
did,
two.
yeah, in
Yeah.
Swiss. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it was we knew it was going to be there. We'll talk about our list later, but we kind of were preparing for it and made some changes last second.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, congrats to him. I mean, heck of a player. He played a great finals match against what I think is a very tough matchup for him, honestly. And another surprise deck in the finals. We have Roaring Moon. On everyone's tier list, Roaring Moon was kind of like what B tier at best. Maybe
Yeah.
C tiers, and they took it all the way to the top. But just weren't able to finish it out with a really cool moon list. It's basically just a turbo, go fast, four trekking shoes, four Pokemon catcher, two judge. So that way, once I get my guys set up, I can just disrupt you a little bit. Petulant to auto your stall matchups and things like that. Um, but yeah, the deck's pretty strong. I've played it a couple of times, and I like the deck. Curious Max, what are your thoughts on the finals matchup? I mean, Thorns versus Roaring Moon.
Yeah, exactly right. If you're making a betting line for which two decks would appear in finals, right? The bank made house, right? No one was betting on Iron Thorns, Roaring Moon for sure. And again, I think it's really a matter, right? Roaring Moon was one of those strong decks that is aggressive, that can get going very quickly. Has a lot of new tools, and I think was very underexplored, at least like in the West. I know that there are several Japanese players, very good players from Asia that brought a similar type of build to this Roaring Moon, and had solid finishes, or at least were able to win games and out of a deck that people really weren't ready for. Iron Thorns was a deck that we did kind of hear some rumblings on when we got in on the island of Oahu. Hearing a lot more players talking about it, a lot more people ready for it. It being some people's fallback decks, other people saying, "Hey, actually, it's in a decent position right now if you're able to just find what you need." And again, it takes a good string of matchups plus good play to put you into that top eight. And once you're there, right, a little bit of luck and a little bit of flipping heads on your crushing hammers and a little bit of finding what you need and your opponent not finding what they need, and you become world champion.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes that's just what it takes, is a little bit of luck, a little bit of coin flips. Maddox loves some coin flips around here, so it's nice to see a coin flip card taking home the world championships. But
Well
yeah,
said.
looking at the top eight, there wasn't a lot else that kind of surprised us. Jesse Parker went on a tear, was, 12-0 going into top cut, and looked invincible, right? Just playing very well, very consistent, right on deck, and he was ready and played very well. But unfortunately, got paired against Iron Thorns in the repair in round and top four, and it just didn't go his way. He prized two generators game two, prized three generators game three. And Fernando played well enough to win the match, and all the props go out to Fernando. But it is unfortunate. I followed Jesse pretty much all of day two and was rooting for him all of day two, and sitting with him pretty much the whole way. And once we were out of it, I just kind of enjoyed the tournament experience. I played the Epic Splash Cube on Saturday, a little bit with Amy and her now fiance Ethan. They got engaged in Hawaii, so was hanging out with them, playing some Epic Splash, and Christian Fontenot was there. He was having a good time playing the cube. Um, but yeah, it's just super unfortunate to see Jesse kind of like, I think if he has better pricing, he probably still wins that matchup. He beat him in Swiss, and he definitely knows that matchup. So I'm not gonna say it's 100% on that. But I think Jesse played well and Fernando played well, and it just kind of, when you have two players playing well, it just comes down to luck, like you said, sometimes, and some coin flips and some prizing. So congrats to Jesse Parker on top four, though. We'll see him next year at Worlds. He's already qualified, so I know he's very excited about that, and has a Pikachu trophy. Um, but yeah, I mean, like, I know I was off of Miraidon for a while. I was kind of a Miraidon hater. I still kind of am. I gotta say that. It's just, if you want to play a beat stick deck, I think that, that Bolt's just better, in my personal opinion. But that's okay. There's also a Bolt in top eight. James Goring made top eight with Raging Bolt. So both decks are good, and it's just kind of matchup roulette. But let's talk about the other four decks. Max, we talked alluded to earlier. Four Regidrago Vstars in top cut, even with all of these decks trying to beat it. Lugia, Miraidon, Roaring Moon. So I think as of now, is it undisputed best deck in format, guys?
I would definitely put it there. It's just like I feel like having all the options isn't even what makes it good. It's just like as fast as the other decks. Basically, you just need like one extra turn. You got more health, which is like more of a reach. They had a like Miraidon can't one shot it with their current builds, and then like Roaring Moon, you have to frenzy gouging it if you want to take it out in one turn. So like it's tough, but I guess for Bolt, you can just sneeze and you have everything to knock it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, again, right, a very much an underexplored archetype heading into NAIC, right? We saw Jacob I with the top 16, really kind of putting it on the map. I mean, and anyone who has been going to locals as soon as they resumed in July, right? You saw Regidrago Vstar start popping up. And then you hear about Kiram, Kiram just really opening up an already strong deck to a whole new level, and just giving you so much more power and really being able to gatekeep a lot of these smaller evolution decks, or even, I mean, any deck that, can't get their folks evolved by a turn two, I mean, it can really be in trouble. So I think a lot of players saw that, knew that it was a very, very strong deck heading in, and just decided to lock in on it, learn it. And again, we saw lots of top players, lots of top testing groups. Again, it was 25% of the rooms have the World Championship. So there's a lot of good people in that room, and about a quarter of them chose to play Regidrago V-Star, which just shows the strength of it. Is it the best deck in format in a vacuum? I think potentially going into Baltimore, is it still a deck that people are ready for? I think also definitely.
Yeah.
Right, we saw a rise of a lot of these aggressive decks that can, feast on Regidrago if they take too long. You leave that Regidrago be in the active, and it's your only one. Maybe you're getting one hit KO'd by a Roaring Moon, by a Miraidon, by a Raging Bolt.
Yeah. So interesting to see how the meta develops towards Baltimore. We'll have all that broken down in our next episode in 2 weeks. When we give our Baltimore tier list and kind of break down our predictions for the Baltimore meta. Let's just kind of like take a look at the rest of day two, kind of top finishers at Worlds. One only Tord Reklev stands out playing a grass Pokemon in a Charizard deck. Maddox, I know like you've been talking about this. You love your Charizard. You've been talking about this Pokemon
Mhm.
for a while. We now finally see it in a Charizard deck and doing well.
Yeah, the Pokemon he's referring to, of course, is a Rapska. Tord chose to not play Manaphy, instead play a 1/1 Rapska line. We saw a lot of new cool tricks come out in Shrouded Fable for Charizard EX, right? Some playing the Dusknoir line, some playing the Petron EX and the Binding Mochi to hit a little damage earlier. Tord didn't play any of that. He stuck closer to the original roots of the deck. Still kept his Cleffa, still kept his 1/1 Barrel line, still kept his now a 2/1/2 Pidgeot. And in the new 1/1 Rapska and the TM Evo. I think really just trying to say that, hey, this is still an incredibly powerful deck, which has a lot of options and can, win games late out of nowhere. And the problem with that is Regidrago is a very, very tough matchup because they can go and KO your Pidgey before anything happens. They just put so much pressure on your bench, preventing your, support Pokemon from getting into play with Dragapult EX's Phantom Dive. So opting here for a Rapska to allow you to prevent all that bench damage from Rapska is really kind of the only thing that blocks damage counters from like an evolution Pokemon for your bench. And even the Pidgeotto to say, hey, even if I can't get Rapska set up, I can evolve my Pidgey into a Pidgeotto. So now you can't kill it with the
Dragon
Phantom Dive. So
Phantom Dive.
now you need to actually boss it, right? Like asking more of the Regidrago V-Star decks in order to take it down. Even things like a Thornton to go and take one of your two Charmanders out of the discard and surprise rare candy it into a Charizard EX. So, very spicy list. Was ready for a lot. Again, Tord was just one match point away from being in asymmetrical or top cut. So, I think if this tournament plays out differently and we see him in there, I think it'd be very, very interesting to see. Because there's a lot of fans of Tord out there. wanting him to kind of get another chance to win a world championship after
Yeah.
getting second last year. Was just 1 point off, or else, this might be a totally different bracket and totally different meta from it. He even played a canceling clone to help into Iron Thorns. So a very, very solid list, very teched, very, very Tord-esque. I think I don't know. The only thing he probably could have done to make it more Tord-esque would be like to play like a 1/1/1 Pidgeot, or even something like even more ridiculous. But honestly, I've played a few games of the list. It's solid. Yeah, do you have some games where you just don't set up because you're playing only two Charmanders and you need to like find Thornton, Rare Candy, Charizard plus Counter Catcher plus Defiance Man? Like, yeah, you do lose some games still. But solid deck and a very, very good player who could really play any pile of cards like he's done before to a good finish.
Yeah. Yeah, two Charmanders, definitely very greedy, and five Fires also extremely greedy, but Tord pulled it off, and that's why he's the GOAT. That's why he's the greatest player that currently plays standard. So I don't think there's any disputing that. Parker, any other surprise decks for you in day two?
Some Chen Pao up there. I
That
mean, that
Palkia V-Star I see?
is there one? I didn't actually see it.
Yeah,
Like just
Palkia V-Star in Chen Pao Baxcalibur.
okay.
Yeah,
I thought there was like a pure.
No, no pure Palkia.
Yeah, Lucas
Okay.
Zing, a pure Chen Pao warrior, piloting Chen Pao to a sneaky, quiet top 16 finish. Chen Pao EX actually had the greatest conversion rate of decks into day two. Right, that number is partially skewed because a very small number of elite players chose to play Chen Pao and piloted very well. Second highest conversion rate was Iron Thorns EX. So
Ow.
um, I haven't spent too much time with Chen Pao deck, but does opt for the 1/1 Palkia line. I think just a few more options for early aggression into these aggressive decks. And also, Star Portal's still pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, that one's cool. I like that Guardy Bennett that's in there. And then one list that I really, really want to try actually that I got smoked by my friend playing on Thursday is 77th place Ancient Box
Yeah, I like that list.
with yeah, it's got Pecharunt and Big Moons and four Dark Patch and um a lot of just go play the game and attack cards.
Essentially just ancient box with two Moon EX, right?
Yep, basically.
It's kind of what it is. It's a
Mm.
nice list. I like it as well. So Christian Dunfario, not sure if I pronounced that right, but
Bono Frio.
yeah, he's an Italian player. Like the list a lot. I agree. But yeah, we saw some of our friends' favorite Pokemon in day two. We saw some cheese on stream. We got
Mhm.
some Goldango up in day two. So Goldango is trying to make a little bit of a comeback. I think like more than anything, like this tournament just kind of said that what we've been saying all along. Pick your favorite deck, know it very well, understand all of your matchups and how to win all of them and all of the different lines that you can take, and you can win the tournament. And I mean, Fernando Fuentes did that, right? I mean, he picked the deck, he knew all of his matchups, and he won it, you know. And the Japanese player that made, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that name, that made second, they've been playing Moon for a while also. So, just pick your deck, and know it a couple weeks in advance. That's very important, right? You can't switch the last couple of days. Anything else to talk about from the tournament? Uh, Before we jump to Parker's interview segment?
Not particularly.
Parker, the floor is yours. We are now your
Right. No,
interviewees.
I am the host of the Beach War Podcast. I'm just kidding.
Yes, sir.
First order of business.
Deleting this. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Well, all right, gentlemen. Going into the event, you seem to be pretty locked on your 60. I know I tried to argue Temple out of the deck, but you guys kept the Temple, but you added Cologne. So what made you guys add Cologne? Was it the whisperings of the Iron Thorns? Was it you really, really valued the Manaphy Cologne play, or what was that?
Yeah, I mean the number of times I was able to use that card on Manaphy was not a lot. The number of times I used it on Flutter main and other things that were kind of annoying was more, right? So I think Max and I heard, all of the Iron Thorns rumblings and like that it's coming. And we tested the matchup pretty hard without it, and found that it was kind of unfavored and you basically could never get going. But as soon
Sorry,
as you
matchup into what?
like Drago into Thorns
Okay.
without Cologne. And we tested that, like when we played it with Cologne, there's a noticeable difference that like as soon as you hit that Cologne and you have that pop off turn, the game is like extremely different. So for that reason, that's why we talked about including it. Matt, actually want to add anything about the Cologne?
Yeah, I think I guess one thing like taking a little farther step back, right? I mean, our list as a whole, right? We had a pretty solid like 56,
Yeah.
probably for, a month before the tournament where we felt pretty comfortable with this. So it was kind of deciding those last tech cards. The questions we were figuring out is kind of how much to restrict like stall decks, and kind of, how much extra flexibility we wanted. We were getting to a point as the meta was developing where we felt comfortable enough in the matchups into Charizard and Gardevoir that we didn't really need the clone, right? Kind of like Eric said, and I agree.
Yeah.
We didn't really use Prime Catcher, Cologne, Manaphy. That the play didn't really happen too much, and we are already in good shape in those matchups without it. So there's kind of a period where I said, well, if we don't need Cologne for those matchups, then why are we even playing it if we're favored enough into them? Obviously, Cologne's very good into stall. At the time, we were testing a Professor Turo scenario, which we did end up keeping, as well as a Pal Pad. So at the time, we have Turo, Pal Pad, Prime Catcher, all for stall matchup, feeling comfortable into that. We have a lot of, we feel comfortable into the matchups of Charizard and Gardevoir, really the main areas where we need that cologne at the time, where we kind of in a spot where we said, hey, we might not really need this. As Drago became more and more popular, we saw the rise of Klefki. We became more concerned about Mimikyus, about Cornerstone, about other ways that they can try to wall it out. And again, I think Cologne was probably like our 61st card. We were kind of considering, do we play it or do we not? Maybe considering extra energy or an extra recovery card. And kind of once we hit the ground in Hawaii, we heard enough rumblings about it. And we had already been kind of thinking about it anyway. So we just kind of settled on, hey, okay, we're gonna throw the Cologne in. We want to have that option. Say our list is a little more teched, to give us answers into everything, which I think was the right call at the end of the day. Definitely helped me in my match into the stall
Yeah.
deck that I played.
Yeah.
And the case against Guardy. And also I think the ability of just playing it and even having it in your discard to be able to save and be able to threaten at any time that you can go and grab that cologne does put that additional
Yeah.
pressure on your opponent. Just because Legacy Star is a very broken ability that is really, really cool. It's like VS Seeker, but it's also could just be anything, not a supporter. So
Yeah.
very, 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 very good. So
Yeah.
been enjoying the deck a lot.
And I'll say the cut we made for it was the third fire energy. And we kind of like tested that a little bit with our suite of recovery cards.
Mhm.
We knew for a very long time we wanted at least three recovery cards, sometimes four we tested, and we ended up with double superior plus rod, and those three combinations. We found that it was enough to have two fire in the mirror, and then any matchups that we need those fires, and kind of a best of three, that two fires was enough.
Mhm.
So that's where we landed on how we put Thick Cologne back into the list of where we were.
Definitely, definitely. So, is there anything that you're sitting down the night before again, and you're like, I saw the future, I need to change this card in my list? Are there any cards like that now, or are you perfectly happy with the 60 you played?
Go ahead, Max. I'll let you go first.
The change, and I think really it's around the recovery cards. Again, it's something that wanted more time to test with. I've played a few games since Worlds, Isaiah Bradner's list, where he was using the three fires and then two super rod as the only recovery cards. Two super rod felt really, really good. I know a lot of other top players chose to play two super rods, instead of, maybe a 1-1-1 split or like the double superior. So we played the double superior, which was fine. I do think that, going back, the extra super rod maybe in place of one of the superiors I think would have been nice. I don't think it was a make or break the list or the matchups type of thing. um there's some cases where like that third fire would be fine, so maybe that's the only case I would consider where it's said we cut both superiors and add a rod and third fire. but I don't think it was a make or break of the list. But just being nitpicky a little bit would keep that. I was fine with the Palpad Turo package. I haven't been playing too much with it since Worlds, but I think that knowing that we knew that Lax was very, very good going to the event and just giving us some more time in that matchup, I still value highly.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I don't know kind of what I would change, if anything. I think the list was pretty close to perfect for what we were trying to expect, and the decisions we made. You know, and this is one thing I can kind of look at now that I actually haven't. Were there any Gardevoirs in day 2 that had neutralization zone? No, zero. So we definitely wanted a stadium in because we were worried about that card. That was
Yeah.
the reason why
Well,
we
it's more
wanted.
so for Lugia.
Well, yeah, what I'm saying, we wanted a stadium spot because of that card, and additionally, Temple was just the best stadium to have because of Lugia. So I don't know. Maybe you just don't cut. Maybe you just cut the Temple and say like, all right, sack the Lugia matchup a little bit for another consistency card. I'm not sure. Maybe it's Pokestop, right? Maybe that's what that card is. Maybe a little bit more dig. But yeah, I don't. When I walked away from the event, I walked away satisfied with our list. And gotta give props and shout outs to Azul. We worked with Azul all summer. With probably one of his last final coaching clients he's ever gonna do. So thanks Azul for helping us out. And he basically said you got to beat Stall, and we built our list to do that. And Maddox got paired against Grant, and they were playing Stall, and Maddox beat him. So I think our list was totally fine. I would not play it to a best of one. I will say that it is a best of 3 list.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, if going to a cup, I wouldn't necessarily recommend our list. Probably
Yeah,
don't need the Palpad Turo,
yeah,
for that,
yeah.
things like that.
So just want to call that out. You could switch it up. Look at my Twitter. You'll kind of see some adjustments that we made last weekend for a cup for a best of one cup. And maybe you don't even need Goodra in a best of one nowadays. So
Or
although
just playing the
Goodra's
top
good,
four lists because they're all pretty good too.
yeah, they're all
So,
good. Yeah, yeah. Anyways,
That is
no,
true. All right. So next scenario, you got a good hand. Your opponent's flips their card over. With your good hand, what matchups are you feeling like? Oh, he flipped over this Pokemon. Okay, this should be game fine. Or like, oh, this is gonna be tough. Just explain some like matchups, I guess.
sure. I mean, they flip over Comfy. I'm like thrilled. I'm like, let's go. Thankfully, none of my opponents did that. Um, Comfy. I mean, the matchups you feel great into are any Comfy deck, kind of like Zard, even though I can get a little sketch here and there. Any evolution deck, really. Comfy deck, Guardy deck, um, Pidgeot, Pidgeot deck, even Pidgeot control. You're probably gonna take your chances again. Like, hey, you're not ever getting a Pidgey until you find Thornton. You just keep
Yeah.
abusing the Pidgeys. I mean, those are the three. Those are the kind of the decks, and the way we built it, obviously, they flip over Snorlax. I'm like, great, like, we're gonna have a good time. But yeah. So, Max, what about you? What are the good matchups for you outside of those?
yeah, it's kind of funny. I was thinking through that in my head, and like, there's very few matchups where it's like, unless they flip over Comfy and they're like, oh, whoops, I don't play Manaphy, and then I'm like, okay, fine. But like, honestly, like the deck, it's like I never feel like totally comfortable in any matchup somewhere, right? It takes a lot of 50-50s.
Who
It
does?
says, okay, again, they flip over like a Raging Bolt. I'm like, oh no, this could be bad. But everything else is like, I feel like I have a chance in. And I think it's really just, saying, I think it's more so I look at my hand and say, okay, is my hand good enough to get an attack off turn 2 without using Legacy Star? And I normally don't know from that first hand. I normally have to squawk and I play research after that or something like that. But in general, right, those evolution decks are good. I played like a weird, mix of meta, so my world's run doesn't really feel representative of like what decks you'd really play. But I played a Gardevoir and a Charizard, which I won. Which again, if they're not playing any of the Rapska or anything, then you can really put a lot of pressure on their bench and just constantly, threaten their setup, threaten multi-prize turns, and threaten big knockouts. Big 3 prize turns or more than 3 prize turns, even with Kirim.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I play. I was fortunate enough to play in 4 out of 5 mirrors my first 5 rounds. So that was a lot of fun. I did put some practice into the mirror before the tournament. So I kind of had a really good plan of what to do in a couple of different situations, and most of the games it came down to me pulling off a 4 or 6 prize turn on my opponents. The issue with that was time, and I tied 3 times. So, I mean, I don't really love when they flip over the mirror, flip over the card for the mirror, just because like that match does take a long time, and it's not like you can win 1-0. You're gonna usually get to second game and finish that second game. So you gotta win the set 2-0 to kind of win the set or establish a gentleman's agreement and to finish that third game because it's very difficult to finish, especially like I mean me, I play as fast as I can, but when people don't know what you're doing because they haven't tested it that well and you know what you're doing, they're gonna think harder and take longer. Um, I was fortunate enough to pull off a couple of 6 prize turns over the course of the weekend. But yeah, I wouldn't. That's like the one deck I wouldn't want to see. I'd rather see a Lugia than the mirror. To be honest with you, just because
Nah.
like Max said, like he doesn't want to see Bolt. Like I'm okay. Like in my head, like I'm okay in the Bolt. Like it's like all right, Radzard, here it is, turn 2. Okay, great. You bossed around it. Great. Here's an Iono and here's a Radzard. Deal with it. And like if they got it, they got it. I know the route and I'm okay with it, and I'm okay to accept that fate because at least I know I'm gonna finish the set, right? The
Yeah.
worst thing is like getting a tie, especially when you're up 6-1 in a game 3, and you're like, great. So, yeah, I really don't. I hate ties.
Yeah. I feel you, especially in this new format. It is brutal.
You literally just can't tie anymore because like it's X2 to make day 2. It's not X2-1.
Yep.
So every tie is essentially a loss.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, if you tie enough, it kind of balances out. But like, and
You just
at some
can't
point, a
lose.
match point is a match point. But right,
Yeah.
the harder part is, you don't get that like free before you kind of get like one free tie, and you can
Right.
still make day 2. Here that's really gone. I was fortunate enough to go 5-3 and avoid ties, which a lot of fast matchups. And I think there was only one where it was like, okay. I think it was we were out of contention already and playing a guardian. It was like, okay, I had a very strong position on board even though the game was wrapping up. So I think they could have in theory like stalled out like a turn or two, but then they just kind of conceded it at
Yeah.
the end of game 3. So
Yeah. I was undefeated through 5 rounds at Worlds.
don't check the stats on that, y'all. But
I was undefeated.
yeah, 302 or
Two two
203.
oh three.
203. 203 through 5 rounds. And then I
And
hit
then you
two
hit
Lugias.
and then you hit our podcast guest Rahul Reddy. So,
Yeah.
but the listeners will hear more about that game a little later.
Yeah.
He was not ready. Um. Anyways, you guys touched on this in this last question, but how often did you test the mirror? Are there any cards that you could play that could help the mirror? And then, like,
Sure.
is it really like polarizing on who goes first? Or how do you feel with that?
Go ahead, Max. Take the lead and I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I think the map like I played a lot of I played several Drago mirrors like in kind of testing and like in locals in Jacksonville before heading to Hawaii. And I felt, kind of got comfortable seeing that, right? You set up a lot of things. The Gudro found very good of just being able to preserve your Regidrago Vstar, as well as just kind of set up for like a larger multi-prize turn later with, Halucha, hidden Ogre Pawns, or, spreading damage with Dragapult, things like that. I think going first is a pretty big advantage in the mirror of just being able to get that first attack off that early pressure. And also, again, you have the added benefit of being able to, if you needed to, or if you had enough resources available to go, Tina, KO, or Regidrago, and just kind of really put a lot of pressure on by just taking that first 2 prizes. In the mirror, if you're able to push up a 1 prizer, then that helps you a lot as well. The one card I wish we kind of had space for, which I've been playing with a little bit since Worlds, is the Cleffa. Just being able to push that early, it helps you refill your hand, makes it easier to pull off those big plays, and something else that your opponent then has to go around later on. So but I mean, yeah, other lines, seeing the work that Isaiah Bradner had put in, where on stream, setting up for the double Kirim plays, was like oh, like things like that hadn't quite seen before. Like bossing an Ogre Pawn so you can hit it with Kirim and then finding the boss for it later. Like some neat plays like that. So definitely a lot of learning. I think a lot of the room was doing with mirrors. I know Eric was pretty prepared for them. I didn't hit any Regidrago mirrors, so
Yeah, I
didn't
mean,
have my skills tested that much.
I
Yeah.
really know like how prepared I was, but I tell you, after round 1, I knew what I was doing. Like I pride myself on being able to figure out stuff mid round and figure it out pretty well and quickly. Especially like when I lose a game, like I'm usually always winning game two because I adjust very well. Um, I mean, like you said, they're almost always squawking if they play it for the most part. So you're just putting six on the squawk, and then you're coming back and putting a couple damage counters on it later for you to clean up with a Dragapult or with a Kyurem or something. Like you can put five on it to Kyurem it later. Like the one card that like we played the Turo saved me in one of the mirrors because like they were going for that play, and I'm like, yeah, Turo attack. Like, so you have two routes. It's like you go first and you just, pressure. You go, if you can Tina, you can, but usually you can't Tina. So you just like Gudra on your first one, put the damage in play, and then you Gudra again, and you Halucha Gudra. There's like you just keep putting pressure on. You can even like put three on both V stars, just so you can Radzard later as a single prizer with Iono combination. And that usually will work too. So I found myself in the mirror attacking with when I'm in a head, when I'm working well, I found myself attacking with Radzard more. When I'm going second and I'm going behind, when I'm behind a little bit, I found myself wanting to go for like that's multi-prize, four prize, six prize turn. So I think like that's kind of where you want to go is if you're going second, you maybe want to go for that. If you want to go first, you go a little more aggressive. Um, that's just kind of how I feel about the matchup. But I didn't test it too much before we left, or even with Maddox in Hawaii, I was focused on like the beautiful island of Hawaii, and we went surfing and did some cool things. So oh, that's my
Yeah,
my
no,
opinion.
definitely. Um, you mentioned it just then. Was Radiant Zard clutch? That card's been like absolutely crazy for me in the
Yeah.
deck.
Oh, it's so good. The card is so good. I mean, again, like if my opponent flips over Bolt, my first attachment's going to my Radzard, not to my
Yeah,
Draco. Like, because
exactly.
they're gonna take a two prize knockout. Next turn, I'm going Teal Dance, E switch, attach, die.
Yep.
And then like next turn they're gonna go okay bundle, and I'm gonna go. Here's a Halucha. If I have it on the bench, like I'm gonna try and put the Halucha on the bench, play around bundle, but maybe they hit a boss or a catcher. But Rats are just good into everything. It's good into Maridon. It's good into Moon. It's good into all those big like aggro decks that kind of can feast on you a little bit. No, yeah, I mean you'll lose to one of those decks every now and then because they'll find the boss off of Iona 2. Um, but
Shout out
usually
Pheasantipity.
well, I mean, that's the case. That's the thing. Like, so I found myself in those matchups. We've got a player here locally that plays Bolt all the time, right? My move is okay, Radzard, he goes, okay, boss, whatever. And I go, okay, Prime Catcher Fez, Radzard, Iota 2. And like off of that, like they have a hard time finding like the pieces they need to get there. As
Yeah,
long as you can KO the Fez.
yeah,
You can't leave the Fez on board.
yeah,
But yeah,
definitely.
long story short, Radzard Clutch, best card in the deck, honestly.
Yeah, I was looking
Agreed.
at some of these lists and I was just like, bro, this guy didn't play Radzard. Like how? But
So we
Yeah.
tested just for everyone listening, we tested Radiant Gardevoir for like probably a week, Maddox. I mean, probably tested that card into Lugia, into Mirror. And it just wasn't good enough. It wasn't strong enough compared to the power that it gives you in those other big aggro decks that you can swing those matchups better. It wasn't swinging the Lugia matchup enough to make it worth it.
Yeah, I think the only other thing to note is, again, I'm a big fan of Radiant Charizard. I know that there was a lot of top players that opted not to play any Radiant. I know I was talking with Aiden Kusum about this, but also like Michael Davison's top eight list, the same list that Andrew Hedrick and Caleb Rogerson all played. They chose not to play a Radiant Charizard, where I think they were just valuing extra spaces and more consistency to get the Regidrago going, which I think there's merit to. I'd be curious to have a conversation with them later on at some point to just kind of evaluate like, hey, how did that feel for them? Any adjustments they'd make and how they feel in those aggressive matchups as well without it.
Yeah, so Andrew Hedrick, if you're listening, leave some comments below.
all right. Next question. Are there any misplays that keep you guys up at night? Anything that haunts you? Anything was like, wow, I just can't believe I did that and lost the series because of it.
Sure.
Yeah, I got one, unfortunately. It's our
Uh-oh.
for good friend Radiant Charizard as well. So playing against, I my three losses were two Raging Bolts and one of the Japanese style Roaring Moon, with the four catchers. This one played an unfair stamp though, so it was very very saucy. My first time seeing it, and then I was like, oh, when I saw it get second place, I was like, oh, that makes sense. This deck's kind of good. So but I'm playing against I think I think the first Raging Bolt opponent. This might have been like round 3 or something. Game 3, I'm like, okay, Radzar's pretty important here. I'm doing my prize check. Oh, Brad's always prize. I'm like, oh dang, like, all right, this matchup just got a lot tougher. You don't have that option to go attach to it early, kind of get the pressure, get it on board later on,
Yeah.
all that stuff. So, I'm kind of, they go aggressive. I'm trying to like piece together some attacks, trying to like mount a comeback. Um, and maybe 3 turns later, I'm like doing a deck search. Hadn't taken any
Uh,
prize at this point.
uh,
Radiant Charizard's there. I was like, are you kidding me?
Oh,
So I was definitely just like, no, what I like what I just do? How am like and
oh,
yeah, and that's where I'm like, where did I go wrong? Like how did I end up in this situation? Like I should have seen that. So that's one that kind of like keeps me up a little bit, where it's like, okay, well, hey, if I had that going, then like maybe I could win that game because I'm applying the pressure earlier, and then like maybe have a little better chance there. So kind of unfortunate. I guess it just disappeared, or maybe going too fast, or I think just in a game 3 situation, maybe just lost a little bit of focus there. That's been a spot that I've been working on the past few tournaments of just making sure like retaining focus throughout all the rounds of a long day. But we will I have slept at night since, so happens.
sure.
yeah.
Check
I
your
mean,
prize cards, everyone.
yeah, for me, there's nothing specific that comes to mind. There was definitely a few of those moments, Max, where I'm like, oh, I prized 2 E-switch. And then I look and I'm like, oh, there's
Yeah,
3. Cool. Like, great. Like, but there's just times when price checking is a pain, right? And this has to be addressed by Pokemon. Something has to happen with the time rules or something because like I'm a nice person at heart, especially when I'm meeting someone new, and I'm very like nervous sometimes to call a judge or even ask my opponent to speed up sometimes. So like that's something I feel like I misplayed about in the tournament. There was times when I had friends even standing by me at the end of a game 3 when I'm dominating 6-1, and he's like, "Why didn't you call judge?" Because like even like they realized how slow it was. So I hope to like kind of improve that skill this year. At least asking my opponents if you could pick up your pace. Figuring out how to phrase that properly and at what time and when to call the judge and things like that. So I just I don't like price checking and spending time on it because you need to do it to play well. Just like Max said, like he misplayed a lot in that game because he thought he didn't have it. But if he knew that he had it, he would have played very differently, right? So um, just that's for me. That's my personal misplays is making sure I know how to control the pace of the game and finish the best of 3.
true, true. I got a question for Maddox real
All
quick.
right.
What do you think? Do you think there's anything you could have done to propel yourself to get 6th win? 'Cause I
Mhm.
know you finished 5-3, which against the best of the best, still a respectable record.
Yeah, I mean, right, fine, pulling, getting Radzard off your deck with a nest ball when it's in your deck like that. That in matchups like Raging Bolt, like that's a very big piece of helpful. No, I mean, I think ultimately, I played overall well. I think that the tricky part is that these tournaments are just so punishing. When it comes to pulling together exactly what you need. I actually think it was like the game 2 of that set. Or actually, no, it was again an earlier match. It was in a different match where basically, I kind of didn't see like turns far enough ahead, and there's this position where it says, okay, I need this one extra energy on this ogre pawn for this late game attacking scenario, but I didn't have that available to me because I had mismanaged the resource earlier.
Mhm.
Um, so I mean, I think, and again, it's tough because I think like you go to your locals or you go to most games that are regional, and you're not always like punished for that type of decision. But it just with such a scrutiny and such a high level of play from a high level of competence of everyone that you're playing against the World Championships,
Yeah,
you really need to play at the top of your game. So I think what propels me to that next level of getting to a 6-2, getting to a World State 2 finish is kind of throughout this next year, kind of refining my focus in the games, and really just trying to, not only keep a clean, play and sequencing throughout, but then also looking, far enough ahead for potential scenarios and kind of being ready for those. Um, mostly involved by finding your Redzard if it's in your deck. So
Maddox saw the Radzard after he'd already checked and the phrase started playing in his head.
literally, it was later. I was like thin. I was like, I don't have anything in the deck to thin out, and I see the Radzard. I was like, what? And then I go like, I'll draw this Radzard. I'm like, great. My opponent's gonna be like, yo, why did this idiot not bench the Radzard earlier if it's in his deck? And I'm like, do I just gotta tell this guy that I like missed that in prize checking so he doesn't think I'm like an idiot? But no, I mean, and yeah, so I mean, and I think the other part of the World Championships is right there is an element of right there's that luck element to it. I've definitely had my luck throughout tournaments, my positive runs, right? I look at Portland as things going my way, says, hey, I hit two Raging Bolts, a matchup that I can beat, but it didn't play perfectly enough to beat them. And then a spicy deck I wasn't quite ready for that also was very aggressive. So I view this like I lost to three aggressive decks that kind of feast on my deck, and I didn't play as well as I could have in those games. So I think again, even when you're in a bad matchup, finding the lines to win, and knowing that you're not always going to get there, but putting yourself in the best position to win, which I know that I didn't do in all of those games. Right, there are games in the set that I lost that I could have played better, and ultimately didn't, and that's the difference.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel that for sure. Um, well, you guys looking back now, wish you played something different because I know I was testing your Drago deck and then I was like, let me see something. And I played Miraidon. And I was like eating Dragos alive on the ladder. I was like, you guys might want to change to this, but I know you guys were very set. But do you wish you played anything different now?
No,
No,
no. I mean,
proud.
I mean the deck's just very, very good,
No, it is.
and as long as you like play well and understand your matchups, like you can win.
Yeah, definitely.
Like four of the top eight, that's kind of hard to like say, hey, I wish I played something different of four of the people that like half the top eight, like that's tough to say.
Yeah, and it's also a deck where, like there's nothing that just beats it. Just like has an out to everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, very very versatile. Again, saying, hey, if I played Drago and I went 0-4 drop, and then there was like three of them in day two, and they all did poorly, then it'd be a different conversation. But no, this was the deck that the most people chose in the room, a deck that I've had fun playing, since NAIC and was comfortable with. And a deck that I went 5-3 with, which again was a little short of where I wanted to be, but ultimately close. Happy with the deck choice, and going back would do it again. Maybe play two super rods, but that's about it. So
True. All right, last question for the future. You is this a play for Baltimore with the prevalence of all these like two prize decks and like ancient box making a comeback?
Yeah.
Like, is this still in the cards for Baltimore?
Find out next week when we unveil our tier list for Baltimore. I don't know. I think the deck's still a good play. It's never going to be a bad play. Like you said, nothing autos it. And with the rise of these two prize beat six, more people are going to want to play Charizard. And you can kind of feast on that a little bit. And I also think that maybe you play Cleffa, right? Maybe because of there's more of these two prize beat six, you play more outs to open a single prizer,
Yeah.
in those matchups and get to it easier when you need to.
With free retreat. All right. Well,
yeah,
that concludes the interview.
Hey, thank
yeah,
you,
World
Yeah.
Parker. Hey.
Championships.
Hell
We
yeah.
did the thing.
We did the thing. Speaking of doing the thing, thank you for listening, everyone. Hopefully, you're enjoying this content. Make sure you press the subscribe button below if you haven't. It only takes a couple of seconds on YouTube. We'd really appreciate it. We're really close to that 500 followers mark, and we're trying to hit that, so we can keep bringing you some great content. Maybe once we hit the 500 mark, I can talk these goobers into doing weekly, and we can have this more. So we'll see, but we got to get to the 500 mark first before we can do that. Additionally, speaking of doing it, the Beach Court podcast number one fan, Nathan Stratford, and team took second place at Xander Bennett's trivia in Hawaii. I was late, so I didn't conclude much, like help much in the first category. I think I helped with a couple of questions. I'm not really a trivia guy. But Maddox, I know like you were killing it. You and Nathan were like, and McKinley were killing it. And you guys carried us a little bit.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. Like the trivia that Xander done before at NAIC was like it was a pretty wide scope and had a lot of like TCG history, which is not my strong suit, just because the in-depth knowledge you would need for some of those, like, oh, who won OCIC 2015. Like, I got no idea. I don't even know if they had ICs then. But but yeah, definitely shout out to Nathan Stratford, and as well as our buddy McKinley, who was also from Jacksonville, made worlds with us. We had a fun time at trivia, and shout out to Xander Bennett. Anyone going to regionals up here this next year, follow him on Twitter. He's gonna be doing more trivia at different regionals and ICs and things like that coming up, and he's just a great guy and a good follow. So definitely check him out for some more trivia, like trivia on the Beach Court podcast.
Yeah, speaking of trivia on the Beach Court podcast,
Oh
the
no.
fans spoke. They want it back. Here it is. Are you guys ready for this week's trivia question?
I realize that Stellar Crown's coming out, and I'm scared now. But maybe that's next week's question, so we'll see.
Yeah.
All right. This week's trivia question. For those of you listening on the podcast, jump over to YouTube and comment below what you think the answer is before looking it up. This is about the 2024 World Championship. So this just happened. According to Limitless Statistics, how many different deck archetypes made day 2 of the Pokemon World Championships?
Back archetypes.
All right,
Archetypes.
let's start naming decks. We got Zard. We got Guardy. We got Regidrago. We got what else made top 8? Iron Thorns. We got Roaring Moon. Does Roaring Moon
Additionally,
include Ancient Box?
I can clarify that. Hold on. Additionally, if you tell me the decks that were only represented by one player, there are 3 of them, I will give you a bonus point.
One player.
Only one player represented 3 archetypes.
Let us know if Ancient Box is separate or not.
Yes, it's separate. Yeah, it's separate.
Okay.
Box.
There's Ancient Box. There is I think there's Snorlax.
Yeah, definitely Snorlax.
There's
Alessandro
Goldango.
Kermas. Yeah, Goldango. Alessandro Kermasoli did make day 2 with whatever his normal
Pidgey control.
Pidgey control.
Okay, so that's probably the one of the one archetype ones, I think.
Chen Pao. We talked about that.
Yeah, Chen Pao. I think there's more than one Chen Pao.
Oh, Lugia.
Lugia. Fly high as always.
Yeah. There's definitely basic decks we're like forgetting about.
There's Bolt. Did you do Bolt?
Yeah, I got Bolt, yeah.
Was there any regular, like, actual Dragapult?
No, I mean there had to have been like one Japanese player who played like Dragapult Pidgeot. I mean, could you have played? Actually, I don't know. Can that deck survive in a room with 25% Drago? Like, let's be real. Did one person just dodge all of them? Did one person just hit like 6 Charizards in a row and then like 2 Dragos and then like 4 Dragos and then finish like 6-6? Like, I don't know.
Oh, did you break Maridon?
Oh yeah, that's
like
deck.
Jesse
You
Parker.
forgot Maridon.
Oh,
Did a Tina make it?
I
like one
don't,
Tina had to have made it, right?
I don't think so, because I would have been like, oh shit, let's go.
Alberto Conti, did he play Tina? I don't even know.
He did, but I don't believe he made day 2.
Dang.
There's a Guardy with Bennett that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, does Guardy Bennett, is that a variant?
Does that count? Does that count?
There might be a straight Bennett deck.
I know Henry Brand played Bennett.
Yeah, but he didn't make it.
He didn't make it. I don't know. It feels like everything, right?
There's got to be some other like one. I mean, what, anyone playing Conkeldurr? Actually, nah.
Blood Moon Valiant.
I know someone who almost played that to Worlds.
Oh yeah, any Iron Valiant piles or like Entei? Did anyone play the Ogre Pond Weird Ear thing?
I have no clue. I don't remember seeing that, but
it has to be even like one Dusknoir pile.
I also don't remember seeing that either.
Had to have been one Arc, maybe.
Arceus.
Arc's pretty bad though. I mean, it's not bad. It's just like bad.
Anything. Well, yeah. Anything that has a good matchup against Drago has a really good matchup against Arceus.
Okay, so we're at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
All right, what are the decks again?
Gazard, Guardy, Regidrago, Iron Thorns, Roaring Moon, Raging Bolt, Ancient Box, Snorlax, Goldango, Pidgeot Control, Chen Pao, Lugia, Miraidon. Did a Dialga make it?
I
Did
forgot
a
about the Olga. I don't remember seeing it though.
I don't think I think I'm trying to think of decks that we would have like heard of. Like we heard about Goldango, right? If Dialga made it, did Gouging Fire make it?
I actually think that deck's good, but I don't think so.
Gouging Fire, Monkey Dory, shenanigans. Did Blissey EX make it?
Pussy.
I don't think so.
All right, I'm gonna need y'all's
There
answers.
has
We
to
have to get to the next topic.
All right.
there has to be like one random Dragon Ball player. Oh wait, didn't is he a senior? Didn't freaking the winner's brother play Sablezard?
Oh, actually, we didn't include any lost box, so there had to have been at
Didn't
least
he?
one lost
Or is he a
box.
senior though?
I don't know. Okay, there's definitely a lost box that survived. I'll say lo
Certified.
I'll say lost box and a Dragapult, just one of them.
One of each.
And I got to count
That,
1, 2,
I
3,
mean,
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And do we want to add like one or two more for extra? Or we just had 15? I'm deferring to you, Parker. We gotta
15's a lot. I think that's probably accurate.
okay, so
15-ish.
hey, so maybe yeah. Okay, well I'll send it. We'll send 15.
All right, and what decks do you think are the decks that have one?
Would we say we had one random
We
Dragapult
one
sneak
random
in?
Dragapult, one random Lost Box, and are we saying Alessandro Cromasoli is the only Pidgeot control?
Pidgeot one? Yeah, I
We
think
got top
so.
32. Like, I mean, he's just cracked, but like, there had to have been one other person. Actually, I don't even know.
I feel
I'll
like
say it
I
was
don't
just him.
remember
Go ahead.
seeing much. I think I remember him as the only Pidgeot player because like me and Disney were talking about it,
Okay.
but I think he's the only one.
Yeah, we'll send those.
All right.
Lost Box, Dragapult, and Pidgeot control.
Okay, so we have 16 total
Should have added the
archetypes.
one. Should have added the one.
However, I'm gonna give you guys the win, and the reason why I'm gonna give you the win is because, and I'm gonna clarify this with Maddox. Maddox, is Bayonet on your list?
No.
Yeah, you guys talked about it, but you didn't add it.
Oh,
But
the
Guardy
Banette
Bayonet
Guardy.
was separated into a separate category
Okay.
for the one that made day two. So I'll give you guys the credit for the win on 16.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
What were the one ofs?
However, you did not get the three right. You got two of them right.
Dang.
You had Lost Zone Box. There was a
Okay.
Dragapult played by Eddie
Yeah.
North.
Eddie, let's go.
And then
Oh, I feel like I saw that tweet.
the Bayonet was the other one that was
Okay, but no,
one
okay.
of. There
Oh,
was a secondary Pidgeot control by Yu Ito.
what
And Yu
place?
Ito, 111th place, played the Melodic with the ability that says your
Oh.
opponent's Pokemon in play and all cards attached cannot be put into your opponent's hand.
The Turo Tech.
So
Love it.
Okay.
does have the Turo Tech. So we would have lost to that list.
Well, no, he
Actually,
was Prime Catcher. No,
yeah,
actually, well, the
actually,
real thing is we killed their Feebos and their Pidgeys before they did anything.
yeah, true.
That's
Actually, he doesn't have anything to even stop us from. Oh, he's got the Luxray. He's got the Luxray reversal combo in it.
Oh,
All right, bet.
true.
Anyway, so that was this edition of trivia. I hope you guys are playing along at home. Drop your comments below if you got it correct. Um, and so yeah, that was a lot
Pretty
of fun.
good.
Yeah, you guys did
Actually.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
let's go.
You
Damn.
guys
Not
did
bad at
good.
trivia.
Okay, so next up we do have our interview with Rahul Reddy. He is the ninth place finisher at this year's Pokemon World Championships with Lugia. So stay tuned for the interview with Rahul next. All right, we're back here at the Beach Court Podcast, and we're joined by Rahul Reddy. He's the ninth place finisher this year at the 2024 World Championships of Pokemon Trading Card Game. Rahul, I see you're home. How you feeling, man? How was Hawaii? Was it a blur?
It was a lot of fun. It definitely was a blur. It still doesn't feel real that I'm home.
Yeah.
Because I got home on Friday, so it's been, but at the time of recording, it's been like 2 days since I got home. And so it still feels like I'm still on the come down of like I was surrounded by all these people doing all these things, and now I'm back to my regular 9 to 5. Like I logged on to work this morning and did a full day of work, and I was just like, oh, back to the normal thing.
That full day of work is horrible, ain't it?
Yeah.
The first full day back, you're like, man, what is that? What decisions did I make? Why didn't I
Yeah.
just stay?
Man,
Catching
if
up on
I'd wanted,
emails, you're like, this
yeah, if
sucks.
I'd won a couple more games, may I wouldn't need to come back. So,
Yeah.
It's funny, Rahul, me and my girlfriend, we had a bet that if I won Worlds,
Yeah.
we could just fly straight to Australia for a week.
Oh,
So
that'd be fun.
so that we were like, we're already halfway there, just get there.
Just
So
add on, yeah.
sadly that didn't happen, but we'll get to that later. You were actually the one that put me out of Worlds contention. But we'll talk
had
about
to
that
do it
later.
to
That was
him.
a fun set. But before we do, we've got some quick hitting questions for you.
Sure.
Make sure the listeners, excuse me, can get to know you a little better. Are you ready for those questions?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Rahul, what's your favorite Pokemon?
Umbreon.
Umbreon. How many Moonbreons do you have?
Actually, I have all the Umbreons from probably 2011 to now, and I have a
Ooh.
couple of the older ones, and I do plan on collecting like one of each in English and one of each in Japanese if I can. The older English ones are a little bit more expensive, and I want like more decent quality, so I might have to actually go to like card shows or something to get those. And the Japanese ones, I do plan on doing a Japan trip with my sister when she graduates, coming up here. So I promised her that. So I think when I do that trip, I'm gonna like branch off and go explore some card shops in the evenings and go hunting on my own.
You gotta hit up the shopper that does it for you.
Yeah, the little like iPad thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's her name? The person that does translations. Their name.
Oh, Twine.
Antoine
Oh,
Boulet does
Twan.
like
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
Twan.
Mhm.
Yeah,
they do the shopping for you, so that's
yeah, it's
pretty
true.
cool. You have to do one of those one time. Anyways, next question. What's your favorite regional location you've ever been to?
Ever San Diego probably.
Ooh, you've been to Australia. You didn't like that one better?
Uh, I think the only regionals I played in Australia was Perth, and that city kind of sucked. Um, we were like joking around too how like the whole city is like an old mining town. And so like everything there just closed at like 3 or 4 p.m. So even after like, I squatted up with the
Oh,
Australian
okay,
guys and we
yeah.
like we wrapped up, we got like a win, and like the only places open were like pubs, but even the pubs were closing at like 8 or 9. So like we couldn't even get like a proper dinner before we had to head to the airport.
That's tough.
Jeez.
Hawaii was kind of like that too. Everything closed early.
Yeah, true.
These next two, it's kind of a couple questions here. When did you start playing Pokemon cards? What's the oldest memory you have, and what was your first starter?
I remember picking up cards when I was super, super young, like maybe for like first grade time frame. So like that's what, 22 years ago now at this point, I guess. But I didn't play competitively then. I kind of like hopped between games like every kid would, kind of like whatever's on the playground, like whatever. Like I went to Yu-Gi-Oh for a little bit. I know I have like
Yeah.
Yu-Gi-Oh cards, Beyblades upstairs somewhere. Like I went through the whole paces of everything, and then I came back to Pokemon when Heart Gold Soul Silver was released. Um, and I found like a league near me. I remember I'd come home from school and I'd bike there pretty much every day, on Friday, sorry, after school. Because my mom was like, "Oh, you're biking. That's good for you." And I just kind of didn't tell her I went to go play Pokemon. Um, so that was like in eighth, ninth grade. So 2010, about 2010 is when I started actually like playing. And then I think my first half competitive season I was pretty bad. Didn't really do anything, kind of was just tagging along for rides. And 2011 was my first US Nationals, and that's kind of where I fell in love with the game. And like it was just really cool because back then social media wasn't a big thing. And people didn't have like iPhones like they do now. And like it was more of a like forum boards, like Facebook, like that kind of atmosphere. So you had to
Burbank,
like,
yeah.
yeah, you had to work pretty hard to find people that like love the same things you did. So when I got to go to nationals and there was just like, I don't know, a couple thousand people that all loved the same things you did. The open gaming room was there like 24/7. I remember I just like didn't leave the open gaming room until basically like the chaperone I went with was like, "Yo, where are you? Like, you need to come back to the hotel room." Um, and then my first game actually was Crystal, and so I believe my first starter was Totodile.
We like Totodile around here.
Nice,
We've been a
nice.
believer in Feraligatr. We're still working on that deck. We're gonna make it
Yeah,
work. It's gonna get a finish one of these
One of
days.
these days.
yeah.
Next question. What's your favorite Pokemon deck you've ever played?
That I've ever played, I think it's probably got to have to be Mew 3. Like I think the Welder Mewtwo deck was just so fun
Deck
because
was
it had
good.
all these options. And I don't know, the format was like faster back then. I know like tag teams was like a controversial topic for a lot of people, but I think like that format itself, even though it was pretty fast, like Mew 3 having the options it did, made it so you had so many different ways to win games.
Yeah.
So it never felt like you were super out of it. That being said, every game was super volatile, so maybe that was just a little bit more of like an adrenaline like gambling high that I was hitting that made it a little bit more fun.
Yeah, you talk a little bit about tag team leads us right into my last question for the speed round. You got ADP Zacian and you got Shredded Fable format. Which is worse?
ADP Zacian for sure. Like that, like I just don't think people understand how bad that
It
was.
was
Like
so
we
bad.
never had to play a lot of official tournaments in that structure,
Nope.
but like I can't imagine going into a regionals and having to like mandatory slot 4 crushing hammers into your deck. Because if you didn't, you just pretty much lost the first moment an ADP got to attack. I remember playing a little bit for Players Cup. Um, that format sucked. That format like really, really sucked.
Yeah, so that was tough. So thanks for those fun questions. People get to know you a
Yeah,
little bit better. Let's talk about Worlds. The World
absolutely.
Championships happened. You had a great finish. Tell us a little bit about your process and what decks you were working on leading up to Worlds. What made you decide to play Lugia, and was there any other decks you were like really close to playing?
Yeah. So our group is was pretty big for this Worlds. Typically we have like a core group of players, and I think Isaiah is like our biggest workhorse. Where like I think every good group needs to have one person that you can fully trust in because they're going to put the work in like more than anyone else. But you can't leave it all to them because if you leave it all to them, then at that point you're all just mooching. But our workhorse for the most part was Isaiah. Like he always plays, he's always thinking about it. But he was in school this summer. Um, so we kind of lost our like linchpin for the most part. He was still putting his best foot forward, but we didn't have a lot of his efforts. And then so this world was special because we had a lot of people in our like semi-close friend group, Alex Hill, Michael Slutsky, um, like those guys like Sam Chen, like all these guys qualified in a year that they might not have qualified in a different year, but they all wanted to play a Hawaii Worlds because they never got a chance. Like none of these guys did. So for them who played back in 2012, this was like a one last ride, one last hurrah. So we had a bigger group, so there was a lot of voices. There was a lot of voices in the Discord. A lot of things were going on. And most notably, some of our better players, Grant Shen, Lucas Zing, those guys were pretty quiet, like leading up to the event. So we get to, I don't know, probably like a month out, month and a half out, maybe like, let's say 5 weeks. People are already playing games. Most notably like me, Isaiah, a couple other people are just playing games. We're getting an idea for the format. And early on, we all realized that Drago is like super busted. We were all like, we should have put more time into Drago for NAIC. Like that was probably our biggest regret. Like sure, we all had a pretty decent like performance anyway. Like I was a game off of cashing at NAIC. Isaiah was a game off of top eight. So like our guardian list wasn't bad, right? Like it was like just a principle we should have just put more time into it. And so we're just jamming games and figuring stuff out. And so I made a spreadsheet of just every deck that seemed viable. And I just started playing games with them to see like I'm gonna play a couple games. And if I don't like this deck, I'm gonna just immediately eliminate it from my table. Because I think the biggest part about Worlds is even though there's a best deck in the format or the best deck in the room, I want to play a deck that I enjoy for the entire tournament.
You chose
Uh,
Lugia.
and I chose Lugia.
Woo!
And so Lugia actually was off my spreadsheet super early in the process, which is like pretty ironic. And I think the 3 decks I had landed on before like the rest of the group and input started happening was Drago was miles ahead of everything else. Like
Yeah.
Drago was just so far ahead of everything else that I was like, I need to be convinced to play something else. And number 2 was Block Lax, by a large margin. I think Block Lax had the best matchup percentage spread. It felt really good into the whole field. And then number 3 was Bolt, where I felt like of all the high roll aggro decks, Bolt felt like it had the best matchup percentage into everything. Um, Miraidon was actually like something we considered. It got dropped pretty early. But Moon is something we didn't put a ton of time into. But as you can see from some of these Moon lists, you just lose to Lugia. Like almost all these Moon lists cannot beat Lugia, and for us, beating Lugia was a priority. So we were just jamming games, playing games, and then 3.5-ish weeks before, Isaiah proposed an idea that, he's at Dartmouth for the summer doing his summer courses. He's like, do you guys want to come open invite? Like pull up, let's do a weekend of testing. Like I have a lot of Thursday classes and a lot of Tuesday classes, but if you guys show up and do like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, that's 4 days of good games. Like I don't have classes, like I can just do homework while you guys are sleeping, whatever. Only myself, Reagan, and Victor took him up on the offer because it was a little bit of pain to get there. We had to fly into Boston and then take a 3-hour bus to New Hampshire.
Oh,
So it was like what reminded me back of the college days, but not nearly as bad because I would fly into MCO and take a bus to UCF,
Yeah, yeah.
which is a lot easier. That's like 40 minutes. Um, so we get there. It was weird sleeping in a college dorm for the first time in like 5 years. That was pretty wild, but um, we just basically jammed games like every single day. And very, very, very quickly, we realized how broken Block Lax was. Like Reagan was absolutely dominating everybody with Balklax. We were trying techs like Shred Attackers. We were trying Tomb in like any deck that seemed viable to play Tomb in. And Blocklax was still winning. And we were like, dude, maybe block is just the sauce. Like maybe block is the answer, blah, blah, blah. But that's like where some people would just stop, right? Like a lot of people would just be like, okay, we found block, we got the deck, we're done. Cool, call it a day. But we knew that there were still 3 more weeks to Worlds. And the meta is going to evolve pretty quickly because of online
Yeah.
tournaments
Yeah.
and stuff in general. So we came to a pretty good Drago 56, I want to say. We came to a pretty good block like 58. And the deck that started surprising us the most in testing was Lugia. We added a squawk, and the squawk made the consistency just go up like probably like 10, 15%.
Yeah.
Which Lugia, which I think before you could say maybe like 50% of games you set up, 50% of games you don't, bumping that up to like closer to 70 made it feel better. Like Bolt probably only sets up 70% of the time. Dawn probably only sets up 70% of the time. When you get to that number, you're basically on the same wavelength as every one of these other aggro decks. But when Lugia sets up, it pretty much beats every deck in the format.
Right.
So that was our logic. And then we started trying some stuff. Um, we already had the 1-1 Chinchino line for a little bit. Like we had already cut down, like that's where the margins came in. We were testing a 2-1 for quite a bit. And the second one just really didn't do anything because you can't put two Chinchino down against Drago a lot of the time. You can't put down the second Chinchino a lot of matchups. So we basically just cut that for a Pheasantipity because we were like, it is a worse starter, but Fez just makes it so we get to boss easier, like every single time at the end of the game, which is all we wanted to do. Boss, boss, boss. Like that's all the game is at a certain point for Lugia. We just got to get there. And then I think the coolest inclusion was on like Saturday night or something, we were testing, and then a lot of the time, the matchup that gave us the most difficulty was Zard. And in that matchup, we were just like, it really, really just sucks if they can go Dusknoir, pop your Chinchino, and kill your Wardier, and you have to oftentimes Wardier the Pidgeot. So as soon as that happens, you have no way of killing this Zard. Like this last Zard is so impossible to kill. And sure, not every time Zard can make the perfect board of like keeping Luminions and Rotoms off their board. But if they can keep Luminions and Rotoms off their board and get to that board state, it's just really hard to win the game. And so Vic just goes, what if we try Raikou? And I think I was the biggest hater, even until like maybe Wednesday before the tournament. Like Vic posted our DMs the other day and he was like, look who was still a hater. I'm like, okay, I played the card, didn't I? So he was kind of clowning on me because I was like, dude, I don't think this card actually does anything. Um, but Raikou was like a Victor thing. He came up with, he said like, it's an easier way to go, less energy commitment, take out the Pidgeot, and then we have a Wardier to clean up and take out the Zard at the end of the game. And if they don't take out the Wardier, the Raikou and the Rat in the same turn, you basically have checkmate in like every way possible. So it was like a fine inclusion there. And so Lugia was like pretty quickly rising to the forefront as well. And then the boot camp kind of ended. Boot camp ended, everyone went their own separate ways. I believe like some people like Reagan already headed off to Hawaii super early with their families. So at this point, our testing was bad, not bad, but like all over the place. Like some people were
Sure.
playing their own games, doing their own thing.
Yeah.
But I had pretty much checked out for the next 2 weeks. I played some live here and there. Like I was trying out some bad ideas like Ancient Box and some of these other decks that I saw popping up on online tournaments. We had a quick discussion about is Thorns real? Should we deal with it? Probably should have dealt with it a little bit more because Thorns did win the tournament. But for every one Thorns that, like for every Fernando Cifuentes that won the tournament, there was 20 Thorns that died in day one. And Thorns did have one of the better conversion rates to day two, yes, but Shan Pao had the best one. So like take that as you will.
Right.
So Thorns was real. So as we were all still on Drago for the most part, and so we had a Drago game plan going in. We knew how to play the matchup. As Lugia, I decided that I don't care about the matchup. And then as Blocklax, we were like, okay, the matchup is tough, but with double Mimikyu, it should still be super easy. Um, because they usually only play one cologne. We looked at all the lists. We used Trainer Hill for the data. Trainer Hill usually aggregates all the tournament percentages. So if you take like any tournament with over 100 people and put it together, it shows like 1.37 cologne was the average or something in these lists or something. So you have to see the percentages and how many lists actually played them. So we were able to use that as a percentage base to see like what's the expected number of stuff, yada yada. We got to the tournament. I got there Saturday for Hawaii, so I just kind of was just hanging out. We were doing water stuff, beaches,
Yeah.
scuba, snorkeling, whatever. We were having fun. Every day we played a couple games. Wednesday and Thursday we kind of locked it in. I didn't play a lot of games of any meaningful matchups for myself. I played like 10 games with Lugia against Drago with Tomb and Sinnoh, and I went 8-2, and I was like, cool, I'm done. All good. I'm playing Lugia. I was like, if I could beat Tomb and Sinnoh, like I'm all good, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's tough. I mean, Tomb doesn't stop Squawk, right? So I mean,
Yeah,
that's
that's the big thing. And also with Tomb, if you have to put Tomb down as Drago, your bench is just gross. Like your
right.
bench is just
Yeah.
bad.
We came to the same
Um,
same thing. Yeah, we came to the same thing.
so I felt good about that. And basically the other guys were we had a couple guys who were Zard coping because I think Zard started looking better and better on paper. So some people were trying out Zard, and then we had my buddy Michael who showed up, and Michael's been going through this the whole summer, so he was like, I don't really care about Worlds, I don't want to play Worlds, and he played Guardy to get his invite all season, so he's like, I hate this tournament, I don't want to play Guardy, like I'm just gonna show up and like pick up my kit and not show up, and I was like, dude, play both, and he's like, I don't want to learn a new deck, it's Wednesday night, and I'm like, sit down, I'll play against you all day today and all day tomorrow, I'll teach you Bolt. And he was a game off of caching, actually. He was
Yeah.
actually a 10 card deck, a gear Sada away from caching.
Ooh.
Which is crazy to think about. He didn't want to come and even play.
Yeah.
So props to him. He started off super well. He started off 8-2, and then he lost his last two, but Bolt was, I think, the best aggro deck for this tournament, even though Moon and Dawn did very well. So that was kind of the process. I know it was a little bit long-winded of an answer, but we kind of just all played a bunch of Pokemon, got to our gut feelings. And for someone like Isaiah, he was like, well, I know how to play Drago better than almost everybody in that room. I put so much time into it. I'm not going to switch. And for me, I was like, I might play Jigger for Baltimore because I feel more comfortable in the lines. And like after Isaiah played it, and like he told me a lot of people didn't know certain lines and certain things, and I was like, well, after playing against a lot of the Dragos I played against and a lot of the people I like in the tournament, just watching like Top Cut games and stream games, people definitely didn't know what to do in a lot of situations. And that just comes from experience and playing out those like unique, nuanced situations. Because with something like Drago, there's a lot of like weird things that
There's
happen.
so
Like,
many. It's just like you said with Mew and Mewtwo, right? It's like you just have so
yeah,
many options.
a million options, a million ways to close out the game. You can play on things like Pheasantipity properly.
Yeah.
You can do double Kyrems to win games in Mirror. Like
Yeah.
a lot of weird small stuff. Um, so my confidence was just lower because when it comes to Worlds, my confidence is usually pretty low. I don't know. It's just a tough tournament, and it's like one of it's. I have This is my seventh Worlds, and in my first six, I have two top 32 placements. But both those top 32 placements, I think, are frauds because both of them I was pretty much eliminated from making top eight contention super early on. So it was one of those where like I climbed back to get a placement, but I was never, ever, ever in a place
Yeah.
where I could win the tournament.
Right.
So I've always had like imposter syndrome when it comes to Worlds. So this year was a little bit validating, and it feels pretty awesome to give myself a shot, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
one,
Maddox, we got a bunch of list questions that we had that he pretty much already answered.
yeah,
So,
yeah, you kind of covered a lot of them. So I
yeah,
mean, but I think the one thing that I heard that was a takeaway is right, right, Rahul, like a lot of people that listen know that you're part of a very very strong testing group, a lot of experienced players, and you're even saying, hey, yeah, I have a low confidence going into Worlds, or I'm hesitant on the list questions, right? Like, okay, whether it's for the World Championship or for Baltimore Regionals or even for a League Cup, like when your head hits the pillow, like how do you feel comfortable that the choice you've made is correct, and then just execute the next day?
For regionals, I feel like it's a little bit easier because there's so many that like if you mess up a regionals, you can always just play another. And I think that it might not be the greatest like mentality and sentiment to have, but it's kind of like I can always recover at the next one.
yeah.
But with an IC or Worlds, there's so few that with an IC, I always feel scared. And if the whole group is on deck, it makes me feel a lot more comfortable because like, okay, we're all in this one together. So clearly our heads are in the right place. Like even the Mew Excelgor debacle from LAIC, like, our heads were in the right place, but our hearts didn't really deal with Gardevoir well enough. But something like Worlds, it's like the scariest one because there's only one a year.
There's only one. Yeah.
And every year it is regardless of what the CP threshold is, regardless of what the qualification process is, it is a mental struggle to get back to that point. I've been fortunate enough, I think every single season up till now, since the point threshold got changed, like 2017 season to now, I've qualified by like November every single year. So I've had like the burden of like, cool, I can chill, whatever. But that's not the case this year, right? Like this year, it's going to be hyper competitive. People are going to be gunning the whole time. Sure, I could like waltz my way into a regional win or a top four IC, but at that point, I'm already chilling, like I'm already happy about the season as it's going. But I can't bank on that. Like I gotta play my best, put my best foot forward, and with work like this world specifically, I felt like I had tested a lot and I trusted my own like process, I think. I've had worlds before where like I like I'll use 2022 as an example. I think I was ill prepared. I went in and I was freaking out. I was like freaking out the whole time. And my whole group played Palkia because it was the best deck in the room. They played it better than everyone else. Like we came off of like a second and two top 16s at NAIC with the list. So they were like gonna send it. They were gonna full send the deck. And then I personally just switched to Reggie's. Like I just panic switched to like Reggie's last second because it beat Palkia in all our testing games, but it didn't have a great matchup and a lot of other stuff. And I think my own inexperience with other matchups is like what cost me that Worlds. So this Worlds, I was just like, I'm not gonna panic switch. Like Bolt was almost my panic switch. Like I had Bolt sleeved up ready to go, and I was like, if I wake up tomorrow morning and I'm just like all hell breaks loose, like I just can't play Lugia, I was gonna switch to Bolt. But I felt oddly calm, like oddly at like this whole world's I felt resigned to my process, and I said that I would rather lose games because I got unlucky or things didn't work than me making bad plays. Like if I
Yeah,
lose games because I made bad plays, I think it will sit with me longer. And with something like Lugia, obviously there's more variance and volatility, but um, I decided on that deck because of the high roll potential.
sure. Yeah, I mean, I think
Love that.
everyone listening, like one of the biggest takeaways is that you have to trust yourself and trust your process
Yeah.
and test your deck. You can't just pick up a deck at the last second and expect to do well with it. Even if you see the meta shifting to where your deck's a bad call, like don't let that be a thing that kind of, sways you. Trust your process, trust your group. And it's okay to play different, decks than your group as well.
Yeah.
I mean,
Like our
I was the
group played.
first surprise in our match. I'm like, what do you mean you're not playing the same deck as like Reagan and Bradner and stuff? I was
Our
surprised
group
when they
played on
flipped
a
over
lot of
Lugia.
different stuff for this Worlds. Like we had Slutsky on Bolt. We
Yeah,
had the Boomers were on Lugia. Was like me, Alex Hill, Sam Chen, Keon, Victor, and then we had the Zoomers on Drago, which was like Jishen, um, Isaiah. Lucas was not switching off C-Pow, which I'm actually like really proud of him for because he played C-Pow all season and he was just like, I'm gonna make this work. And we're like, dude, it's not gonna work. And he's like, I'm gonna make this work. And he got 16th, which is like awesome for him.
Made it work.
He did hit like 5 Thorns, which is absurdly free of a matchup, but
yeah. I was gonna say, how many Dragos did he hit?
I think he had won the whole tournament. I don't
That's
even think
wild.
that's the game he lost. I think he lost to
That's wild.
I think he lost to a Moon or something like that. Um,
That's
but he
wild.
beat like 5 Thorns and he got the bye, so like 6 of his wins were like handed to him on a platter, which is awesome. Um,
Hey, still
so
counts.
yeah, it counts. And then we had like Reagan and John who were like pretty much on lax since we got here. And Reagan was like, I mean, like in Reagan and John both like John beat a Lugia. Like he hit 3 Lugias and beat one, which if you hit
Wow.
3 Lugia, your tournament should just be over, on paper. So these guys like we fought through what we could, and
Yeah,
everyone kind of landed on something else because it's Worlds. Like it's your tournament ultimately at the end of the day.
that's right.
Like put your fate in your own hands.
Yeah, that's right. So good job to your team and your list. Max, got any more questions about the list before we
No,
move
I
on?
mean, you touched on it a lot. I think I'm happy to hear about like, some of your tournament run.
Sure.
I mean, really
So
didn't touch about the energy. You want to touch on that one for?
yeah, I think I know there was one piece, right? A lot of people were worried about Drago, especially with playing a Cinchino line and even like some rumblings of needing ways with like Mist Energy, the one V Guard, one Mist Energy, and one Lightning. That was probably like an interesting inclusion. Just wanted to know if you want to talk about that real quick, some of
Sure,
your
yeah.
just process.
The Lightning, obviously, I think the Lightning Vessel package was something
Yeah.
we were well, I was like pretty sold on because I think having 2 ways to use hands is
And
super
discard
good.
Orcheops, right?
Yeah, and discard Archeops, and like it's
And
also really,
Raikou.
really good for using the Raikou. So you have those two options, and it doesn't hurt you too much in like the grand scheme of things. Like if those two cards weren't there, it probably just becomes like an additional ball card in some capacity, and then like another like mist or something. So it doesn't like really hurt your process in how you're doing stuff. Um, the one mist, one V guard was actually something I fought for pretty hard in the list because we had 2 mist originally, no V guard, because we were just like, well, the Sinnoh's going to come down anyway. It's going to be a problem. But I was like, we need to force the Sinnoh. Like, but there were so many situations where like the 30/30 would already come ahead of time, and I was like, it doesn't matter because if you have V-Guard, you can offset things like the Curum plays, where people would go 30/30 to Archeops, go Halucha, go Curum. So as soon as they go 30/30 to Archeops, you already know that like you can just go V-Guard, hold the V-Guard for that play, stuff like that. So you basically can the V-Guard just is it's like bait more than anything. Like if you play one V-Guard, now your opponent has to think about probably multiple. If they play one mist, they have to probably think about multiple mist. And the one mist didn't actually do anything, like for the most part in the tournament. It actually came in handy because I hit 2 moon decks and I was like pretty confused when I hit the moon deck, so I didn't really know what was going on. But I just slapped the mist on and I was like, cool, what are you gonna do about this one? And they just lost. Like I genuinely didn't have to do anything else past like slapping a mist on because they would Petrant poison themselves to get to 220 and I would just knock it out or like kill the Petrant. And I was like, okay, like what does the rest of your deck do? And the answer
Yeah,
was nothing.
yeah,
Um,
Yeah, sure.
so I just like the energy split. Give me options. You have to play 4DT because of Wardier. I think if you don't have 4DT, your Wardier is like negated a lot of the time. So every other energy I think made sense. Maybe I could have cut a gift for like second mist or something, if Moon continues to be more popular. But besides that, I think there's no other like cuts you can make on energy.
Yeah, I like it. I
yeah.
like the saying to the bait, right? Where you play one water energy and Giratina type of
Yeah,
guy.
yeah, same
So
thing. Yeah.
I was ready for more mist for sure. Not gonna lie. like more mist and more V guards. I was kind of shocked when I realized I was only like 1-1 in here. Like I
It makes
kind of
people
realized
just
it
play
like midway
differently.
through game two.
Yeah.
I think like game two you had prized like mist or something, and I took advantage of it a little bit.
Yeah.
And I was like, and then afterwards I found out I had one. I was like, oh, that makes sense. But yeah, let's talk about your tournament run a little bit.
Sure.
You know, you're through 3 rounds, and you're 1-2 at the World Championships.
Yeah.
You said you fight those low confidence demons, all the time. How are you feeling going into your round four, against Kevin, and what was your mindset then, and
Pretty bad.
how'd you control it?
Honestly, pretty bad. Like so it wasn't just that I was 1-2. I think the way my two losses were delivered to me were pretty rough. Right, the first game I hit Zard, and game one I prized like I full break the game, and then game three I prized 4 energy, which in my last 4 prizes, which made it so I couldn't use Wordier to basically like effectively checkmate the game because I can go Wordier, and then Blood Moon basically closes out the game for me. But I couldn't do it in that route because I priced 4 energies and I was like sick. So that was a little bit daunting. And for those of you listeners watching or listening, sorry, my record at round one of Worlds is 1-6. So round one is like my like biggest demon, I guess, that I have to conquer. And then round three was okay. It's a little bit unreasonable that I hit a lost box, a turbo lost box round three of Worlds. And he not only turn one Iron Hands me, he did it with Prime Catcher game two to kill my lone Lugia. So that was about a 5 minute set, and most of it was him playing the game. So I lost a pretty unreasonable set, and I had to sit
That's
around for like
brutal.
50. Yeah, I had to sit around for like 50 minutes. So I was like pretty much like waiting my fate. I was like, I'm gonna hit a Thorns next. I'm gonna hit a Dawn next. My tournament runs over. Like, and I remember my boy Mustafa. He missed his invite by 10 points. Super unfortunate for him. But he has like been my rock all season. Like, I think if there's one guy who grinds a bunch in our group, it's him. Like a lesser known guy, but really, really nice dude. Like if you ever need to be like it's 2 a.m. I'm like, yo, Mustafa games, he'll play. Like that's my boy. Um, so he came down from the center because he just came back down from the chaos that was the Pokemon Center. And he was just like, yo, how's it going? And I was like, not looking good, Chief. Um, and he's like, and then round four pairings go up and he wishes me luck. And I think we laughed about it after, but apparently I turned around, looked at him and said, I'm not going to need it, man. Like, I'm going to go to the beach after this one. So at that point, you can already tell, like, I was pretty mentally checked
Yeah,
out.
you were
Like,
checked out. Yeah.
I was just like, whatever happens, happens. Like, but I know as soon as I sit down, I can turn it on. Like, I'm not going to let the game, like, out of game affect my in game. Um, like like everyone jokes around about how like I think this whole season I've started pretty doomer. Like I even in Pittsburgh I was 102 and I ran it back to top eight. Like even like a lot of regionals this year, I was one game away from elimination, one tie away from elimination, and I ran it back. So that's just been the running joke all year. Um, and round four was a lax. So like I don't know if that was like a gift to me from Tom from Pokemon, whatever. But like I literally won that in like a 3 minute set effectively. Like I flipped over Minchino, he flipped over Lax. I went and got Chinchino, I attached to it twice, and he conceded the game and the set. He didn't even want to play game two. Um, so I had like 50 some minutes that I was just sitting around. And at
That
this
was
point,
round
like
five.
round four.
Oh, round four.
Yeah. And so at this point, I'm just sitting around and I'm like, wow, like that was awesome. Like that was super awesome that I just got that handed to me. And fortunately, my very close high school friend, like I've known him since middle school, seventh grade, one of my best friends. He's never seen like the Pokemon side of my life. Um, but he and his wife came out to support me because they live in North California now, and she has family in Hawaii. So they flew out and they were like, it's a perfect excuse to visit family and come support you. And I remember like I was texting them and they like brought me food and like, a nice cold can of Coke. And I like, sat with them for like 45 minutes talking, chugging that can of Coke, enjoying some like chicken and rice. And I felt better, I was kind of just like, but in my mind, I was still like, no way I'm winning four in a row. Like it's gonna be an uphill battle.
Sure.
Uh, Let me pull up my Arcanine to see who I hit next. Was it you? Did we do it round
No,
five?
you hit Jake Gamblin.
Okay. Yep. And Jake was also a Drago. And Jake had some pretty unfortunate draws against me, I think, in both games where like I feel like um I also lost the flip there. I think the only two flips I won, I remember, were against the Drago round two and the round eight flip. So every other flip I lost, which is also crazy considering I 2-0'd everybody else for the rest of the day. Um, Jake had some pretty unfortunate draws, and he just couldn't get through the missed V guard. Like it's actually just like a huge ask if I can get to
Yeah,
missed V guard super early for
it
Drago to
is.
go get your attack off, get Temple into play, and try not to use your V star. If you have to do all three of those things, like if you have to use your V star to do any of those things, I think you've just lost the game, like on the spot a lot of the time. Especially unless they don't play Radiant. So Jake, the games with Jake were pretty fun. Like at this point, I was already just joking around and having fun. Like I was just kind of trying to be loose as much as possible. So I was just like making jokes with Jake. We were having fun with it. And ended up being a 2-0 in my favor. And then, we ended up hitting right after that. And our games were just
Capturing
like, I think,
Aroma Tails, that's gonna haunt me for a while for sure.
yeah. And your starts were, I think, probably some of the worst starts I've seen in a long time. Like that research, I think, or your squawk was like 5 energy or something like
It
that.
was it was really yeah, it was really bad. I mean,
Yikes.
game one was really bad, but then like game two was a lot of fun, and we
Yeah.
were playing a really good game. I was setting up for the Kieran play a little bit, and then you
Yep.
played around it.
Yep. 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 I went for
Um,
the V guard play. I like,
yeah, you went for the V guard, so I was like, all right, well, KO with Radzard, Iota too. Uh,
and then my deck was like a million boss outs because now that everyone looks back on it, it's not like I high rolled
yeah,
into bosses. I played two
yeah,
fish and four boss, so my outs to
exactly.
boss
Yeah, I
with
knew you had a lot
Fez
of
were,
outs to it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Like a lot of people across the tournament were like pretty upset when I hit like the one
No
of
way he
three
got
boss a lot
there.
of the
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
yeah.
No
But
way
like
he got there.
my deck was like geared to hit the
I
boss.
mean, I hit the Iona Temple combo, and I was like, all right, well, let's see if you got it. And
Yeah, yeah.
and all you
But
had
like,
was the aroma, and I'm like, no, please, not this.
yeah, Aroma Tails. Yep, yep.
Yeah. His other card in hand was a boss. He just wanted to flip just for
Yeah,
fun.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm
I,
just
definitely.
I think I remember showing Eric the hand to it. I had a Goza in hand and I had a Fez, or like Goza Nest Ball or something. So I could have gone like Nest Ball for Fez and draw three, but I just started with the Aroma because I was like,
Yeah,
if I
yeah,
just hit this here, it's over.
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
Um, so I could have kept going, but obviously, like, you know, two flips and a draw three is not an ideal way to try to win a
No, no,
game.
no, no, definitely not. Not when you play
Um,
four boss, exactly.
yeah.
I
So
mean,
at
so
that
so
point,
you went against me. Like, are you starting to believe at that point, or
I still don't want to let it like the belief hit in because like I'm 4-2. Like I think until like round eight, I didn't really feel like nervous about the game because I was like, okay, if I can get to 5-2, like because I think at 4-2, it's still like anything could happen here.
yeah,
Like I think the fifth, the win and in round is like always what's like gonna stress me out. So the next round, round seven, I hit Diego, who's playing Moon, but it's like closer to an ancient box version of Moon than the big Moon that we saw like Sanosuke get second with. Um, so this version, I don't really know what was going on for the most part, but game one he like kind of full bricked, and he should have I think conceded a little bit earlier because he
right,
gave me a little bit of a look into his deck, and I think he like discarded a big Moon off of the Explorer's Guidance. And this is a game where I probably could have thrown on accident because I just didn't realize that like Ancient Box could now play all these like options because he had like opened like Walking Wake or something or like Fluttermane, and so I was like, oh, it's just Ancient Box. So my mindset was a little bit in the wrong place, but he bricked a little bit, so kind of got lucky there. And then game two, I had like this five head play where he had a big moon set up, and we were at 4-4 price cards, and if I
Mhm.
attack into the big moon, I don't knock it out because it had the tool on it, so it was at 290. And so I had to go sack a prize and then go boss for game. And I could go hands, and hands is like he had like a bunch of small guys. Like he had Tatsugiri and Greninja on the board, so I
Ooh,
could go hands
okay.
to end the game too. So I jetted up an Arc Yaps and I just left it. And I was like, we're both just gonna sit here and either you give me time to find my boss or you take this knockout and put the onus on me. And he knocked it out, which then gave me access to Fez. Fez drew like a billion cards. Um, I benched the hands attached, the lightning that was in my hand, accelerated to it with the other chops, bossed up the Petrant, took out the Petrant. He had to go around my Lugia also because I had the mist on it. And I remember he had to take out the Pheasantipity, but he didn't have a
stadium.
yeah, he didn't have a way to do anything to my hand, so I just had access to boss again to close out the game. But it was like a very close game that I was a little bit like sweating about because I didn't really expect to see Moon, and I was like, oh my God, what if I see another one of these? And so
Yeah,
now I'm on the winning end, and I'm like, so I'm sweating bullets. Like at this point now, it's like starting to set in. It's feeling real. Um, a lot of our group has already moved through. Like I think Jishen was in, Lucas was in, Isaiah was in, Michael was in with Bolt, and the two people left on winning ends were me and John. So everyone was joking that John and I would hit, and John was lax. So everyone's like, dude, John is like going from 5-0 to 5-2 and hitting Rahul would be the worst case scenario. I'm like, please, man, don't let that happen to John. Like, I love John. Don't let that happen to John. And Perry's go up. And I see Mateusz, and I'm like, wait, this is the guy who plays Bennett. This is the Bennett guy.
Mhm.
And so like I know him from his Twitter. I know there's a guy that only plays Bennett. I sprint straight to Isaiah. I'm like, yo, what do I do? We just like talk about the play a little bit, and he's just like, I think if you V-star, you can't lose the game. I think it's like literally impossible to lose the game if you V-star. And I was like, that's true. His deck just doesn't have any damage. If he's playing Bennett stuff, he's not playing Drift Loon and all these other attackers. His whole deck revolves around me bricking, which I did. I did full brick against him, but I opened Iron Hands and I opened Legacy and Lightning. So I just went attach, attach, attach,
Arm
attack,
thrust.
arm thrust the I had boss for his Greninja, and he hit hammer double tails. So my
Oh, you
guy's
played
just going
Hammer?
in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he played hammers. And so then I go Lugia, and so game one I just completely sweep because I get to go arm thrust again, and he has to go Iono to 5 and go for the second attack, and I think I needed 3 items for him to knock me out. But even if he knocks me out, I had gift and legacy.
Right.
So even if he knocks my active out, I get to proc. Um, I can start going to Lugia and I can start Lugia V-starring and start going in and doing stuff. And so at that point, the game's already over. But it was like added insult to injury that I only had 1 item in my hand. So I only did 60, and then I just
You
drew.
play a lot of them.
Yeah, and then I evolved, and I was like, all right, knockout. Like my deck is like 45 cards or Pokemon or energy, I think, in my
Yeah,
deck.
yeah, yeah.
So it's like you're not hitting these. Um, so I take Amp for 4. So I'm at now 2 prize cards to his 6, and I have 2 Lugias and 2 Lugia V-stars in play. I think only 1 Chops in discard. But at this point, you have to break item lock, and as soon as you do, I win the game. So he concedes. We go to game 2, and this one's a little bit more back and forth because I do brick quite a bit again, and he takes the first 3 prize cards before I can do anything. And we end up at a board state where he has to KO the Fez, and I kind of throw a little bit because I have gift, gift, legacy in deck, but I go gift, jet, legacy to my Pheasantipity. Um, and this ends up kind of throwing because he gets double hammer heads, taking off the gift and legacy. So if I had gone double gift, then I kind of eliminate that play entirely because I knew he only had 2 hammers left. So he ends up gusting up my Pheasantipity, going down to 1 prize card, and or sorry, going down to 2 prize cards, and he has Radiant Alakazam to kill my Lugia that has 270 on it now for the next turn. So I just can't do anything about that. So I have to win on this turn, and he Ionos me to 2. But I remember my deck was 11 cards and 3 boss, and I just draw for turn. It was a boss, and I knew he Ionoed like 4 cards to the bottom, and they weren't boss. So the odds of me hitting boss were super high.
Right,
Um,
right.
and he was pretty upset, and we talked about it after, and I showed him the 4 boss, and he was like, "Oh, that makes more sense." But he had a Tomb in play too, so the fish wouldn't do anything. And at that point, it felt super real. Like I don't know, I was just like really excited that I did it.
Yeah.
And it was crazy looking around the room because so many people were gone. Like
Yep.
so many people had been eliminated. It felt like a shell of the explosive venue it was earlier in the morning. And it was just like insane. I was like just grateful to be still standing at the end
Yeah.
of the day.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of what the format that we're in now with, with 6-2 and or 7-2, depending on if we have 9 rounds next
Yep.
year. It's going to be shrunk down a lot more. So you're going into day 2. You got to win 4 in a row to have a chance to make asymmetrical cut.
Yeah.
You win a couple in a row, and you get paired against Zach, from the Shuffle Squad, and you're going on
Yeah.
stream for like you're winning in. Like what emotions did you feel? I mean, obviously you won the game. Everyone saw the game.
Yeah.
You don't have to talk about it. Like, but what did you feel like when you won that game? Did you think that like did you know that you were going to be an ASIM cut?
Oh,
How
I
did you
for
feel
sure
about the ASIM cut, and what was your experience playing in that ASIM cut round?
I for sure knew I was going into ASIM because my resistance carries over from day 1. So for those of you guys playing in this season upcoming too, resistance from day 1 does carry over to day 2. So if you come in at like a lower record, even if you make that Cinderella run, there's a pretty good chance you'll be playing ASIM. So like I knew that was happening, and because Worlds is not a tournament, and same with regionals, they are eliminated immediately. I like looked through my pairings, and I had a couple opponents who like played it out even though they were eliminated. Like I had a guy who went a 1-3-1 even though he was eliminated. I had people who played it out to 4-4. So if any of these people just dropped it at X3, my resistance goes up quite a bit more. But there was a guy who I eliminated like at 2-2, or not 2-2. Like some people just played it out, like some people just played, like the lax guy played it out to 4-4 even though he was 1-3 when I beat him, right? So that guy bumps up my percentage a couple points. One of my opponents in day 2 went 6-6 after starting 6-2, so that was a little bit of a ball buster for me as well. And I believe I remember looking at the math, and um I needed like 3.5% not to play an ASIM. But if I get the 3.5%, I run face first into Fernando, which just ends my run anyway. Um, but either way, like I knew I was hitting ASIM. I remember I was like cheering. I was like super excited. They told me I was not allowed to jump off the stage. Um, pretty anticlimactic there. But
Wait,
uh,
sorry. Did you ask, or like were you going for it and they're like, I don't
as
get any
soon as
ideas? Like
I
what?
took off my headset, they were like, "Don't jump off stage." Immediately, and I was like, "All right, cool."
You're like, headsets
Uh,
off, can't hear you. Sorry.
Yeah, so like, and they also gave us like, well, I'm not gonna touch on the Ian stuff or whatever, but they gave us like a 5-minute speech on the do's and don'ts of stream, which I've never had before. Like, because I think production for Worlds is a lot higher. So we had
Yeah.
a lot more do's, don'ts, like definitely a big emphasis on not using like curse words, language, because there's more mics. The mics are highly sensitive for worlds. Um, Seems like they were doing a lot more of like the mic check type things like they do for
Okay.
football and stuff like that. So they were trying to use more audio, which is like sure,
Yeah. We want a higher
on you guys.
production. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so I finished that. They whisked me backstage. I know I'm an ASIM, but I don't have a chance to get to my phone or anything yet because my phone was in my backpack. I didn't take it with me on stage because I just a thing. And so then I got whisked away to the Japanese stream to get interviewed by them, which was really
Oh,
cool. I
cool.
thought that was a lot of fun. Because I've been practicing my Japanese. I was able to bust it out a little bit, not too much. My adrenaline was too high, and then I get whisked backstage, grab all my stuff, and then I'm being called to the hive. So this whole thing is happening, and I'm just like I don't have a second to breathe, which I think was the only unfortunate part about me playing ASIM, because I get called to the hive. I have to turn in my deck. I ask how long. They were like, you have less than probably 5 minutes. Like, go do what you got to do. So I sprint to the bathroom. Between every single round, I like to wash my hands and like wash my face a little bit just to reset. And it was really hot in there, so like helped out quite a bit. So I ran to the bathroom, washed my face, washed my hands, everything. I ran to Jesse in there. We had a quick little chat. And then I ran back out, and they were already doing like well, Rahul Reddy and Michael Davidson, please come to the player. And I was like, dude, come on, man. Like, I haven't even had a chance to get like water or anything. Um, MD's already sitting down. He's locked in. He's ready. There's like 7 or 8 judges watching us. They sit us down. They let us kick off on our own timer, and they give the rest of the
I
time.
want to interrupt you right here, Rahul.
Please.
Why did you guys not go back on stream? Everyone wanted that match on stream. It's kind of like a win in
Yeah.
the top eight, right? And then
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
we want to see the who makes it in the top eight. Like that's a match that everyone wants to see. Did they give you any background information on that? Was it just because you came
No.
off a stream or
I don't think it's because I just came off because I think 2022 was the last time they did ASIM and they did like they might have done Cal back to back or like Otavio back to back or something. But basically I think they want to do that preview show thing that they did for like the 30-40 minutes. And they had already grabbed the top 8 game to take on stream while we were playing our game. So I think maybe it must have been like a time crunch issue.
okay,
Um, because I think they were planning on doing 2 top 8 games into 2 top 4 games anyway. So
right,
like while we were like getting ready, they had already grabbed Ian and Fernando to take on
right,
stream. So
right.
it was like it was like the Raz Isaiah game, the Sanosuke James game, and then us. And then I think it was also kind of messed up that they made Jesse sit there the whole time and they wouldn't let him leave. So Jesse had to sit there watching like our game and wait for it to finish. Even though like he didn't have to be back necessarily for like 30-40 minutes possibly. Um, so they had to make Jesse sit there as well. So they already pulled the top 8 game. We were the only game allowed to start on our own timer because we technically weren't top 8 yet. And like so as soon as we got set up, we were allowed to go. But the other guys got there like
Yeah.
welcome to top 8, like blah blah blah. Speech, and then I think they had already planned on being Jesse being the other stream game because I don't think Jesse had been streamed yet this tournament. Um, I think Jesse had not been streamed yet. I
He
actually
he
not.
he, he got on stream once before that.
Okay, okay. I didn't go
It was
back and
like
watch the
round
stream yet.
12 or something, round 11 or 10.
Gotcha. So I think they're already planning on doing Jesse because like if Jesse got to a 12-0 run, like it's a storyline in the making, whatever. And the winner of the ASIM cut would be like a great match. And I knew that like if I'd won the story of the salty run back from Pittsburgh would be great too because
Yeah. Yeah.
Jesse and I played 11 months earlier, same exact matchup, so it would have been cool to play the same exact match. I mean, I would have gotten absolutely smoked, but uh same exact matchup. But they just kind of like kicked us off. We were in like a table. They had like a row of they had one table of judges so people couldn't like get too close to us. I think I had like 3 judges behind me. MD had 3 judges behind him. Um, we had a table like 2 table judges as well. It was actually pretty intimidating. Like it felt like we were in like a
Yeah,
WWE fight, but the ring was all just like
judges.
Judges.
judges, which is kind of crazy. Um, and both games are kind of turbo bricked, but MD and I had played before, and like I don't know, like there was no jokes, nothing. It was just like a complete like set. Like we both didn't say anything besides attacks and
Sure.
abilities. Like at this point, it's real. Like it's real for both of us. It's like we both did it, like congratulations on making it this far, blah blah blah, and then we just sat down and played. I full bricked game one, didn't even V star, and then game two by the time I was able to V star, like I went first and I missed Lugia on turn one,
Mm.
and I was able to attack and take the first 2 prizes on a squawk ability, which was still good because I opened Raikou. But the following turn, when he knocked out or they got to a position where he could rock out my Raikou, if I don't take 2 prizes that turn, the tempo's already gone for me.
Yeah.
And I don't get to V-star there. I missed the boss, so I have to unfortunately play into his 4 prize turn with Halucha. And that already puts me in a position where like I looked at the board, he's at 2, I'm at 4. I don't even have a great way to V-star this turn. And he has two Dragos fully set up with Firegrass and V-Star left, and I just concede. Because at this point, there's like legitimately, it's already checkmate on board. Like there's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
So I concede. Don't even like waste my energy. I congratulate MD for moving forward. First year mastery, making a top 8 worlds. Incredible accomplishment. Played that kid in Pittsburgh also to start the year off. So it's pretty funny.
Yeah, he's good.
He's improved a lot in his first year of Masters. Gave him a quick good luck chat, and then they whisked him away for stream as well. I think they took him backstage pretty quickly. And at that point, like, I don't know, the emotions were all over the place. Like, I was grateful to have gotten a chance because every other year at Worlds, or like I guess almost every other year at Worlds, ninth is ninth. You're done. Like, pack it up, kid. But I was given a chance to play for my spot. There's some of the greatest players of all time who gotten ninth at Worlds. Like Mahone has gotten ninth. You've seen Jason Martinez, some of these people who like never even got a chance to play for their spot in top 8. And I was given one, which I was super grateful about. But I went to the prize wall to pick up my stuff, and I think like I needed a couple of minutes to just like I just asked if I could like sit in the back and like kind of just let it all out for a little bit. I don't think it was like I don't think it was more like I did anything wrong or anything kind of feeling. It was just frustration that I was so close to the dream that every Pokemon player has. Like I was 2 games away from a trophy, a World's trophy that every single player has wanted since they started. And so I was just a little bit frustrated. It took about 5 minutes, picked up my swag, met back up with everyone, got my hugs, and then watched Isaiah. Unfortunately, Isaiah lost. So it was a little bit of a little bit of a bummer.
Yeah.
And then they were, I think this part's like a little, I think I'm allowed to talk about this. Yeah, I'm probably fine to talk about this. I was sitting there and Isaiah gets like, so they take Isaiah backstage to do the top 8 paperwork, for the booklet, all that stuff for the worlds. Like if you make top 8, you have to do all that stuff. Like I think they're doing more stuff with socials. I don't know if you guys saw the photos of like each of the players and the decks and whatever. And so I think at this point, the Ian stuff started happening because about 30 minutes into them, Isaiah doing paperwork, they come and find me. And they were like, hey, we can't really talk about what's going on right now, but we're going to have to need you to come backstage and do a bunch of paperwork. And I was like, what? And I was like, I got ninth, man. Like, I don't want to do any of this shit. Like, I don't want to do any of this.
Yeah.
So I think there was a world there they could have disqualified Ian from the tournament.
Yeah.
So I think based on that contingency, they had me come backstage, do all the paperwork, do all the photos. Made me feel a little bit better about myself, not gonna lie. But at the same time, it's like I already know this is gonna see like the light of day.
Yeah.
So I got to do all that paperwork and stuff, and then we didn't stick around for much longer. We like Ubered back, dropped our stuff off, went to get dinner, and then I don't know, like the whole night. I think I remember looking at my phone, and I had like over 100 Twitter notifications. I had like 30 something texts. Like I think my parents and my cousins and stuff were texting me. I had Instagram notifications out the wazoo, Discord, and I just like I'm not even joking. It was before dinner. After I called the Uber, I just turned off my phone and put it away. And I was like, I'm just not looking at this. I was so like overstimulated from everything. Like I felt like I just didn't get a second to breathe the whole weekend. So
it goes by fast.
Yeah, it felt like all year we've been like talking about Hawaii, and it's gone in a blink of an eye. Like the whole thing is done.
Yeah.
So that was crazy roller coaster.
Now we've got Anaheim.
Now we got Anaheim. My Cinderella story is gonna take us to Anaheim next, back to Disney. But no, the whole thing was a roller coaster. I'm super grateful for the whole run. I didn't think it was real, even like until I even like going into the last round too. I remember like vividly being like, please don't be Dawn, or Thorns, please don't be. And so I hit Zach. I didn't even know what Zach was playing, but I just knew it wasn't those 2 decks. I was like, yes,
I have a chance.
Yeah, I have a chance. Just give me a chance. Let me play. So
Hey, Maddox, you want to jump into the last section of questions and let's finish it
Yeah,
up?
exactly. Yeah, I mean, so you're the definitive Lugia guy right now. Again, highest placing Lugia. First regional of the season's coming up, and you top 8'd the last first regional of the season with Lugia.
True.
So whether or not you're playing Lugia to Baltimore, do want some of your thoughts on Lugia going into Baltimore in the meta there. So really, where do you see the list, positioned, and if you were to play Lugia, would you make any changes to your list?
I think Zard is going to be, I don't know, like it's weird to see how people are adapting because like my locals, I went to like a weekend of cups, right? So it's kind of like an interesting way to see like how people are thinking because obviously I think Worlds competitors cook a little bit more and like get into the tank and go deeper. But like Baltimore has like 3,000 competitors and a majority of them probably didn't go to Worlds, right? So like a lot of these people are just playing the deck they want to play. there's a lot of aggro decks. Like my cups are infested with Bolt, Dawn, Moon. Drago is nowhere to be found for the most part. So I think that's going to be the trend moving into Baltimore. Like I think people are going to pick up Dawn. People are going to pick up Moon. People are going to pick up Bolt, which bodes poorly for Lugia because Lugia is a little bit faster than the setup decks, but slower than the aggro decks.
Mhm.
I think you have a 50-50, or you're slightly unfavored in a Bolt and you're favored in a Moon if they don't play answers like Temple or Hammer. But Dawn is just unplayable. So if Dawn is unplayable, why would you play Lugia, I think? Unfortunately, the meta is shifting in a position where you have to either play an aggro deck to keep up or play Drago and keep accepting your 50-50s. I think decks like Thorns will not be great because these aggro decks, in theory, have a better matchup in something like Thorns. Um, but I think moving forward, Lugia unfortunately like has to go for a thicker Chinchino line, kind of give up the gimmicks and just go for more like keep the squawk, that card's broken. But like cut some of the gimmicks, like give up on the Raikou maybe. Guardy was nowhere to be seen at Worlds. I don't think Guardy will be a presence moving forward. So you can probably even cut like you keep the hands maybe, but cut the second lightning package. Because hands unironically did actually zero things for me at Worlds. Um,
I mean, that makes sense. You have 4 boss.
exactly. So like I think you can
Just
just give
like
up
220,
you
220.
you could theoretically just give up on the hands package and just play like a second line of Chinchino and try to like capitalize on going boss, 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 and like making bigger, better attackers. I think Thorns is still a lost matchup, even if you play Flutter main. Like I think that matchup is still like 2080. So like I just would not play the Flutter. And I think Thorns will either get like I don't think Thorns will do well. That's my hot take at like regionals. Like I think at Worlds, Thorns did better because the tire like people were gentleman'sing and like there was like a lower tire rate. I don't think that'll happen at regionals. I think people will like I think Thorns will die at like 103 or like 113s
So
and
that's
stuff like that.
interesting. You said that, and I want to touch on that comment a little bit, Rahul, because
Yeah, yeah.
I started out the day trying to gentlemen's every round at Worlds, and I'm of the belief that next season you should try to do that at every regional as well because of
I
the
agree.
state too. What are your thoughts on that?
I definitely think so too. I think like it's fine to gentlemen's. I think the biggest problem is obviously going to be that like I think let me pull up a statistic from last season where the statistic says 79% of players only played one major last season that competed in the CP circuit as a whole. And 93% of players in the whole circuit, so across every region, played in less than 4 majors.
Wow.
So these players are going to be much less likely to like have those
Right,
conversations.
right.
Um, so because these people aren't playing for worlds, these people are just playing for fun and the love of the game.
Sure,
So they're like,
sure.
we don't want to do that. Um, and I think that's going to make it more and more difficult. Obviously, if you hit a better player, someone you know, I would immediately make that like agreement to have a winner. And I think everyone across the board that I hit over the tournament was as open to do that. Like I think every single player I hit did that over the weekend. Um, Even Zach, where like a tie for us would have guaranteed $5,000, and some like cool goodies to take home. Even in that game, Zach was like, "Let's make sure there's a winner." I'm like, "Yeah, for sure."
Cool. Yep. What other questions you got, Max?
That's the main ones I had there. I don't unless you had anything you wanted to add, Eric.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to touch on a fun conversation. I mean, you're one of the best players out there that has consistent finishes. Maybe not, maybe the best player out there without a win. Does how does that bother you that tournament? Do you ever think about that, or like what do you do to try to push over that hump, man?
Um, I definitely do think it's a chip on my shoulder. I'm not gonna lie and say it isn't. I do think it bothers me more outside of tournament rather than in tournament.
Good. Yeah.
Where like, I mean, like even in my own, I wouldn't say I'm the best actually. I think I'd probably put myself like fourth. I think Isaiah is number one. Um, Grant Manley probably two, and then G Shen third. But those guys have all picked up wins in the younger divisions, so at least they have that. I have not picked up anything because I didn't play in the younger divisions. So I guess it is a chip on my shoulder, but I think outside of event, it just it motivates me to work harder. Um, in a sense where it's like I really, really want to win before I leave. Like I don't know how many good years I have left. Like I think the game is getting harder. I think younger players are kind of being they're like a pedigree where like they have grown up in this culture of competition.
Yeah.
Players who began in like 2017, 16 when the modern era began started in juniors. Like Reagan was in juniors back then. Now he's a master and he was one of the best. He was a number one master in America last year. Like these players are coming from all they know is competition. Like all they know is winning. They know how to win. They know what they're doing. So even when it comes to masters, it translates super fast because they've been doing it for so long. And that's just going to keep happening. So at some point, the old heads like me are gonna get kind of like pushed out because I just don't have the same time they do. Like I don't have the same time to put forward and like think about the game, play the game. Like I have to work a 9 to 5. They don't. Um, like they're in college, they can do whatever they want, or like they're in high school still. Like some of them, they're not even in college yet, which is crazy to me. I think I've got a couple good years left, and I do want to take a win or two before I head out. And then at that point, I don't know what I want to do with my like. I don't think I'll ever leave Pokemon completely. The question is just like, what do I want to do with that from that point onwards? Like, am I going to try to like pick up an invite still, do the Ross and Sam Chen method, where like you don't see them all year, have flashy finishes, but you just see them at Worlds. Because I think Ross is like 36, 37, and then Sam is like 35, 36, and they're still picking up invites. So if those old men can do it, I still probably got a couple left in me. Um, and then I definitely want to ramp up my content if I can. Try
Yeah.
to make it so it's easier for more players to learn and play the game. Because I had a ton of people at Worlds, actually a lot more than I expected, come up and say that like my videos were like one of the reasons they started playing or found competitive. And
Wow.
like even though they didn't qualify this year, they came to like watch Worlds, and like enjoy it. And I just like was kind of blown away because like when I started in 2011, I just watched all of Puka's videos, the top cut, and like that's how I kind of got into it myself. So that's like kind of just what I want to be for other people, and like uh just do Pokemon, maybe not compete as highly
Sure.
later in my future, but I probably got like 2 or 3 good seasons left in me, and then I probably have to think about dialing it down.
Understood. Yeah, gotta live life, and sometimes that means moving on. But
Yeah.
Pokemon will always be a part of your community. Obviously, you got it everywhere in your house.
Yeah, absolutely.
You do
Not going
content.
anywhere.
What's important to you. So, before we wrap up here, I want to give you an opportunity to kind of shout out some of your sponsors,
Sure, yeah.
some of your coachings that you do, your YouTube page and things like that. Where can people find you?
Thank you guys for having me first and foremost. It was a lot of fun coming on and talking. You guys can find me at RahulReddy, just my name. It's my YouTube channel. My Twitter is the Flea, THEFL and 4 E's. That's kind of like all you really need to know for the big stuff. My Metafy link is in my bio for Twitter and in my YouTube description. I do coaching on Metafy. You can DM me separately if you need stuff. And I am going to try to run a Lugia masterclass this upcoming week before Baltimore. And then, get everyone prepared for Stellar Crown because that's actually coming up a lot quicker than we think.
A lot quicker.
And we do have a couple of regionals, unless they change the legality date for LAIC.
Yeah. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. Max, you got any closing thoughts?
No, I mean, just excited to have you on. Ninth place at Worlds is a good starter for the season.
Yeah,
So
man.
Yeah.
wishing you all the best of luck into your first regional season, which has gone well for you before, and hopefully keep it going.
Yep. You guys too.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for coming on, and we'll look forward to hearing from you again.
Yep. Thanks for having me, guys.
Okay, welcome back to the Beach Court Podcast. Thank you, Rahul, for joining our podcast and talking about Lugia. We do like to fly high here a little bit. We got some listeners here that we know love to discard double Archeops with an Ultra Ball. Looking at you, Phil. I know you're listening, so thank you for listening. But next up, we're going to shift our talk to the changes to the championship point structure. So there was some really big changes announced last week. We went over this previously, and Maddox did this cool, beautiful kind of PowerPoint and broke down how to get to your target points. We'll work on updating that and try to have that to you either next episode or on Twitter or something. We don't have that for you today, but we do want to share with you the changes. And the changes are that point threshold will go down because your best finish limit is being reduced from 6 to 5. Riley Holbert has this awesome graphic on Twitter. Thank you, Riley, for posting this in one easy view. But you see the best finish limit has changed from 6 to 5. And that still is across regionals and ICs. So while, and we'll talk about the points in a second. Actually, I'll just go to that and we'll talk about opinions afterwards, right? Also, the point structure for international championships is changing, and you can see the difference labeled in the columns below. First place was going to award 750 for an IC, but now it's only rewarding 500. That's a difference of 250 points. And you can see how it changes from first through top 32 all the way down to top 256. So they're kind of devaluing the international championships a little bit more and listening to player feedback because there was a lot of players in the community that were worried about, people that have the money to travel to all the international championships, get a decent finish and get so much more points because they're at an IC versus a regional. So I kind of like this. I'm just curious. You guys want to point out anything else on this chart and what your thoughts are?
I
Yeah.
could go last, I guess,
Okay.
because I have an opinion about
Oh,
it,
okay.
unless you want to save the opinions for after that.
No, no. I mean, go for it, Maddox.
Yeah, I mean, so I think the one like first off big win is that your points for top eight still remain like pretty high, right? And what we saw for the regionals is that there's kind of like a shelf where it's like once you're at a top eight, then the points after that are relatively like comparable. So if you make top eight at a regional, you're at 280 points. If you make top 16 at a regional, you're at 160. So like and moving from top eight to first, is 280 to 350. So it's not a huge jump. Like making top eight is like the big goal. That's like the biggest opportunity to earn points. And same thing here for ICs, where when you're at top eight for an IC, you're at that 380 and you move up to 500. I do think it's nice that the points overall are toned down a little bit. It's not so much, for a lot it was like doubled, I think, in trying to make regionals more equivalent to ICs in terms of like weight, because they are still very large tournaments all the time. So having this constant level is I think fine. And again, and for those that were concerned about the you know how important it was to go to all the ICs to maximize those finishes and maximize the points you could receive, are resting a little easier knowing that they can do well at regionals and make up for ICs that they can't go to.
True.
What do you got for us, Parker? What's your
I
opinion?
think this is a fantastic change because I didn't experience it last year, but I suppose I experienced it in other years. But if you go to all three ICs, you're just at a like such a clear advantage compared to like people who don't. And like me being like not rich, couldn't travel to all those ICs and stuff. And like bringing it down to like a level, because like yes, they are like a little tougher competition than regionals and stuff, but like bringing it down and then like also making regional points like more comparable, because like I think LAIC last year was like barely 1,000 masters, and then like every NA regional was like over 2,000 masters, and like doing like 432 at that event got you more points than like top 64 at like
No regional.
an A regional, like going like 9,942 or something. Like I was just like, man, like that is just wild. But like I think it's a very welcome change for me, at least. But I don't know. I
Yeah, I
think I've
mean,
seen mostly positive feedback for it.
yeah, I don't mind it at all, honestly. Um, I hope like one of the things I hope that this doesn't mean is that the number of events we can get is a lot less, because currently they have not announced a lot of tournaments for North America specifically. And we know there's going to be, I think we've heard there's one in San Antonio in January, and we've also heard that there's potentially going to be one in Orlando. So obviously there'll be some, more championship events that come out, but we did get a couple of new dates. We got the Vancouver um, regional March 7th through the 9th, and we also got Milwaukee May 2nd through the 4th. So we got a couple of more announced, but currently we only have six regionals announced for North America, which seems a little low. I'd like to see us somewhere in that 10 to 12 range. As long as the best finish limit being lowered isn't, accounting for less Pokemon and less major events, that would be sad because I enjoy going to major events and hanging out with everyone that listens to our podcasts. Um, yeah, I think the change overall is good for the game. I agree the ICs should be, not only should they not be awarded so much, but there's people that wanted to go to Europe last year and wanted to go to New Orleans and couldn't. And not
Uh,
because of cash in their pocket, but because of the registration processes. So this will take that onus a little bit off of that to not make it so important that you have to go to ICs. So yeah, I like it.
And also the new changes with advanced registration as well, gives those top players in that region an extra chance to have that early registration for it. So especially if you're on a good run, or you're on a good run to close out the season, and NAIC is hoping to push you into that top 125, you might have that advanced chance to register for it and just help make sure you have the opportunity.
Yeah. So those are the changes. Obviously, we've talked previously a lot about the format changes as far as not being able to tie to go to day two, or you can go 6-2 or 7-2-1 or 7-1-1, but ties being really bad next format. And I'm just going to continue to say this until I'm blue in the face. Pokemon needs to make some changes as it relates to the cash prizing. We saw one of our friends from the Shuffle Squad on stream on their winning in for asymmetrical cut in top 8, lose that match, to Rahul, and then walk away with nothing, like no cash in their pocket. They missed top 32. That's just one case. I'm sure there's others. I'm not going to go dig, but we need some type of like tiebreaker for those money bubbles. I don't know what it is, but hopefully we'll see those changes coming up. Maybe even announced for next season. Who knows? Possibly. Um, now they've got their cash chart right for once again. Pokemon. Anyways, yeah. Anything else to talk about for the season changes that are upcoming? You guys want to highlight?
No, I mean, going off what you just said, they could do it like how golf does it, where it just has like everyone like what strokes they got, and everybody is tied for
Yeah.
tied for 18th.
Yeah.
They're tied for 35th or whatever. It'd be one way.
Yeah. I mean, if the bubble for 32 is 10 spots, and there's 20 people that has that money, you just take the $10,000 there and divide it by 20, and then that's your winnings. It'd be very easy for them to do. It's not a hard calculation at all. You just take the prize pool that's available and divide it by the number of players that earn that threshold, right? So we'll see. Maybe they'll make some changes. I don't know. It's just, especially when you look at someone like Zach who has a baby on the way. That those funds could have gone a long way for their baby, right?
Yeah.
And that just hurts seeing a message like that. So that's just one person, and not everyone.
Yeah, right. For every EUIC where where it was clean cuts, kind of for 64 into 32, there were people that bubbled into 32 at NAIC who at that same points bubbled out of 64. So some sort of change is nice. Again, I think there's probably some logistical issues of like, splitting the prize pool versus what was advertised, and budgets and things like that. But hopefully there's a way that it works out so people that have those strong finishes can be incentivized to play for top 8, to play for a chance to win the tournament, and then
Right.
also still have that chance and also not be penalized because they chose to play to win the tournament, and miss it on that cash prizing that they could have gotten if magical percentage numbers was in their way more. So
Yeah, I mean, like if Rahul and Zach ID, they both would have made probably 5 grand, right? But
mhm.
they chose to play it for because they want to make top 8 to win the tournament, and that makes sense. So it's not fair to them.
Yeah. I guess
But yeah,
one more thing is like, I think it's gonna be even more cases where like tons of people bubble out with the same match point. It's because of there's only being 4 rounds
right,
in day 2 now too.
right. Yeah, fewer ties. Also, people
Yeah,
want fewer ties. Like same thing,
fewer
right?
Mhm.
ties. So I think the bubbles are gonna be like huge just because there's so many less rounds.
Yeah, we'll have to see how that kind of ends up as the season progresses. We've had one tournament with it as example, the World Championship, and probably every tournament upcoming is going to be bigger than the World. So that means even bigger bubbles, more competition, but a lot more Pokemon. So very exciting things down the line.
Yeah. Yeah, so speaking of which, so next episode we'll have our Baltimore breakdown. Thank you everyone for listening to this episode. I know it was a little bit long. Thank you for sticking with us to the end. We'll try to put out some tweets over the coming weeks with some updated data of our kind of point structure, what we think you should hit. And then we'll tackle Baltimore. But if you're not already, look up your leagues this weekend because Stellar Crown pre-releases are happening. Usually we will talk about them here. But we didn't have enough time to cover those here. Parker, when is the pre-release at Cool Stuff?
September 1st, Sunday at 1 o'clock.
Sunday at 1 o'clock. Bro, we can't do it Monday.
Labor
What?
Day,
Labor
day
Day would be
off.
cool. That'd be
True.
kinda cool. And I don't. When is Nakama? Do we have a date for that yet?
I
I
don't
think still to
believe
be
so.
announced.
Still to be announced. Okay. Yep. But thank you as always to Nakama for sponsoring this episode. I was at their how do I pronounce that word? Yakisoki?
The
What's the
squid
word?
thing.
The squid thing. How do I pronounce that? Yakisoki? I think it's Yakisoki. Eating contest, and someone ate 34 of those squid balls in 15 minutes.
Yakisoba.
Yakisoka. I was close. So that was a lot
Yeah.
of fun, but catch us at locals. We'll see you there. But until next time, make sure you guys are following the Beach Court Podcast, subscribe below, leave a comment. All that really helps. Thank you guys. Until next time.
Later.
Later.